Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala asrofil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Amma ba'du. The Honorable, the Deputy Chancellor of University of Azhar Indonesia, Dr. Andes Jirmansyah MPD, the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Law, University of Azhar Indonesia, Dr. Yusup Hidayat SAG MH, the Honorable Chief of Jentera Law School, Mr. Arif T. Surowijoyo SHLLM, the Honorable Dr. Asifa Quraishi-Landes from University of Wisconsin Law School, the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Knowledge and Culture, Dr. Lucilian Piantari SSM Hum, the Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Psychology.
Recording in progress.
Dr. Andes Fides Rinur MPD, the Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Dr. Heri Herdiawanto SPD MSI, the Honorable for all lecturer, esteemed audience of this event. First of all, let's thank the Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who has given us some mercies and blessings so that we can attend this agenda without any troubles and obstacles. Secondly, salawat and salam may always be given to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has guided us from the darkness to the lightness. On behalf of the organizer, we would like to extend a warm welcome and express our gratitude for participating in the international lecture, Three Pillars Constitutionalism, a new model for Islamic government. I am Siti Farhani, acting as the master ceremony at the event today. Ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, allow me to introduce you today's agenda. First, opening by reciting Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Second, recitation of prayer. Third, remarks from Chairman Jentera School of Law. Fourth, remarks from Dean Faculty of Law, University of Azhar Indonesia. Fifth, signing cooperation agreement between Jentera School of Law and Faculty of Law, University of Azhar Indonesia. Sixth, joint photo for all panelists. Seventh, presentation of Three Pillars Constitutionalism, a new model for Islamic government, and response to the book, A New Model for Islamic Government. 8, question and answer. 9, closing. And the last, giving souvenir and joint photo with all participants. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be recitation of prayer. Allow me to invite Prof. Azhariyat Al-Ma'arij to deliver his recitation of praise. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let us bow heads together for a moment and pray to God so that our activities today will be blessed and can run smoothly. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan na'imin, hamdan yuafi ni'amahu wa yukafi'u mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karimi wa 'azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma inna nas'aluka salamatan fid din wa afiyatan fil jasad wa ziyadatan fil ilmi wal amal wa barakatan fil rizq wa taubatan qabla al maut wa rahmatan indal maut wa maghfiratan ba'dal maut. Allahumma hawwin alaina fi sakaratil maut wan najata minan nar wal afa indal hisab. Rabbana la tu'akhidna in nasina aw akhtana. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaitana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmah innaka antal wahhab. Rabbana hab lana min azwajina wa dhurriyyatina qurrata a'yun waj'alna lil muttaqina imama. Rabbana dhalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Amin, 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 ya Rabbal Alamin. The next agenda will be welcoming speech. Allow us to invite Mr. Arif T. Surowijojo SHLLM as the Chairman Jentera School of Law to deliver his welcome remark. To Mr. Arif T. Surowijojo SHLLM, please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very warm welcome to Prof. Asifa, Quraishi-Landes. Thank you. It should be Pak Yusup Hidayat who has to welcoming us because he's the host here. But I'm honored that we will have to very important occasion today. One is the signing of MOU between STHI Jentera and Azhar School of Law. And second, we will have oh, I see. Di mana? Okay, thank you. So we have a signing of MOU between STHI Jentera and also Universitas Azhar School of Law in order to improve our academic activities. We will have a lot of program, and this is one of the first program that we are going to have. The cooperation between Universitas Azhar and Jentera has been, I think, done a long time ago. Not informal cooperation, but people to people. We were linked by late Professor Herman Raja Guguk at the time, one of the founders of Jentera, and also used to be the leader of the law school of Azhar University. Pak Herman was my close friend. We used to be sharing our room in Seattle when we went to have our IM degree. And after that, we practiced law together, and then established Jentera, and Pak Herman also involved in the formation of this university, this law school. The second activity, which is also very important, is the lecture from Professor Asifa, Quraishi-Landes. Will speak on the topic of constitutional law, focusing on her book, Three Pillars of Constitutionalism, a new model of Islamic government. The most interesting part of this discussion lecture is that Professor Quraishi is not only professor and expert on Islamic constitutional law, but also modern US constitutional law. So her deep knowledge and expertise in both systems will guide us to understand how the two systems may be linked, or perhaps complement each other to improve constitution and democracy practice in the global perspective. This lecture and the book of Professor Quraishi-Landes came to us in very timely. As we all know, our constitution, law practice, and democracy has been disrupted by recent violations. We have enjoyed our reform efforts for the last 25 years. We have built all the required pillars of national integrity system. We have the most free election in Indonesia. We have big parliament. We have government based on the election process. We have also anti-corruption commission. We have BPK, the oversight committee, the oversight body, and we have freedom of press. So we have all these institutions that needed to establish to withhold the national integrity system. But what's happening for the last months, I think is very worrying to us, because the fact is that the corruption is still high. Yeah. Lawmaking and enforcement have been corrupted, and democratic practice have been violated. So I do hope that we will learn something from Professor Quraishi-Landes today, something that we have never heard before, that can answer our question why we seem to have been guided to a crossroad of constitution and democracy practice today. So with that, I stop here and welcoming you and have a very productive seminar today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arif T. Surawijojo, SILM, for your delightful speech. Next agenda, allow us to invite Dr. Yusup Hidayat, SAG MH, as the Dean Faculty of Law, University of Azhar, Indonesia, to deliver his welcoming remark. To Dr. Yusup Hidayat, please welcome.
Baik, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, nahmadu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiru wa na'udzu billahi min syururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa may yudlil fala hadiyalah. Shalatu wassalamu ala habibina wa maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain, amma ba'du. Your Honor, the Vice President of Universitas Al-Azhar Indonesia, Dr. Azhar, here with us. Your Honor, Chief of Jentera Law School, Mr. Arif T. Surawijojo. Your Honor, Dr. Asifa Quraishi-Landes from University of Wisconsin Law School. And also the other lecturer from Jentera Law School and also from Universitas Al-Azhar Indonesia. And also my students and all students of Faculty of Law, Universitas Al-Azhar Indonesia. Good morning to each and every one of you. Alhamdulillah, we could gather here for discussion and collaboration. First, for signing the Memorandum of Understanding between Jentera Law School and Fakultas Hukum, Universitas Al-Azhar Indonesia. And also, we want hear the lecture from Dr. Asifa from Wisconsin Law School. Of course, he is very have knowledge from for Islamic constitutional. We want to discuss about his book, Three Pillars Constitutionalism, New Models of Islamic Government. Dr. Asifa is distinguished scholar with many publications and also experiences. Mahasiswa sekalian, nanti kita akan mendengarkan pemikiran beliau. Memang agak sedikit berat ya, nanti pemikirannya terkait dengan konsep filosofis tentang filsafat hukum Islam, terutama terkait dengan makosid syariah dan juga yang lainnya. Tetapi saya kira nanti bisa kita elaborasi ya. Kita ingin melihat model-model konstitusi baik di negara muslim ataupun di negara yang lainnya, tapi berdasarkan pendekatan filosofis ya. Jadi mungkin tidak pendekatan normatif, tetapi pendekatannya pendekatan filosofis. Saya kira ini di dalam dunia filsafat menjadi hal yang memang menarik untuk kita bahas. So this is very good time, very good occasion for us for discuss his book, and we will also to learn what is her proposal in making the constitutional in modern Islamic state. I think enough. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yusup Hidayat, for your delightful speech. Next agenda will be a signing cooperation agreement between Jentera School of Law and Faculty of Law, University of Azhar, Indonesia. Allow us to invite Mr. Arif T. Surowijojo, SH-LLM, as the Chairman Jentera School of Law, and Dr. Yusup Hidayat, SAG, MH, as the Dean Faculty of Law, University of Azhar, Indonesia, to come to the stage, please. We can give applause for our agreement. And then for the next agenda will be take a photo with all panelists, for all speaker, moderator, and participant. Please join photo together, and for yes. Untuk seluruh mahasiswa silakan segera menempatkan diri di belakang pembicara. Kelihatan nggak mahasiswanya? Berdiri. Di sebelah sana. Alhamdulillah. Ladies and gentlemen, now we proceed to the seminar agenda. The presentation will be delivered by Prof. Asifa Quraishi-Landes from University of Wisconsin Law School and Dr. Yusup Hidayat SAGMH from University of Azhar, Indonesia. And also, I'm sorry. Oh, Zoom. Okay. Okay. Before we start the presentation from our professor and our lecturer, allow us to invite Mr. Jirmansyah to give his welcoming speech. To Pak Jirmansyah. Please welcome. Dr. Jirmansyah is the Deputy Chancellor of University of Al-Azhar, Indonesia. To Dr. Jirmansyah can join the audio to give us the welcoming speech. Thank you. Okay, maybe next Dr. Jirmansyah can give us the closing speech. And then we continue our agenda. To proceed the seminar, this presentation will be delivered by Prof. Asifa Quraishi-Landes from University of Wisconsin Law School and Dr. Yusup Hidayat from University of Al-Azhar, Indonesia. And also this agenda will be guided by Mr. Muhamad Faiz Aziz from Jentera School of Law as moderator. We invite all the distinguished speaker and the moderator to come to the stage. Thank you. Please welcome.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to Professor Asifa Quraishi-Landes and Dr. Yusup Hidayat, and as well as our distinguished guests, Chairman of Indonesia Jentera School of Law, Pak Arif Surawijoyo, Vice President of the Al-Azhar University of Indonesia, Dr. Jirmansyah, the university member, faculty member, lecturers, and all of the students and all of the audiences that has been attending in this lovely room. So welcome to all of you in this seminar, International Public Lectures, whom I hold in high regard to all of you, although I cannot mention one individually. Alhamdulillahirrabbilalamin, we express our gratitude to Allah Almighty for enabling us to convene and engage in these public lectures with the title of the Three Pillars Constitutionalism, a new model for Islamic government. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Muhamad Faiz Aziz. You can call me Faiz. I'm a lecturer in Indonesia Jentera School of Law, and as well as a moderator for this event. And beside me, on the left side, there's a Professor Asifa Quraishi-Landes, and she will be the first and primary speaker. And on my right side is Dr. Yusup Hidayat, and he will be the second speaker of this lecture. So let me read the brief profile of both speakers. Professor Asifa Quraishi-Landes is a full professor of law at the University of Wisconsin Law School, specializing in U.S. constitutional law and Islamic law. She is a 2009 Carnegie Scholar and 2012 Guggenheim Fellow with a doctorate from Harvard Law School and other degrees from Columbia Law School, the University of California, Davis, and the University of California, Berkeley. So he has also served as a law clerk in the United States Court of Appeal for the Ninth Circuit. So our second speaker, it is Associate Professor Yusup Hidayat. Dr. Yusup is also the Dean of the Faculty of Law of the Al-Azhar University of Indonesia, and as well as a senior lecturer in this university. So he will be presenting his response to the presentation that will come from Professor Asifa. And without further ado, I will invite Professor Quraishi-Landes to deliver the lecture. So you have the floor for the next 40 minutes. So allow me to provide a reminder if 5 minutes before.
It's on? It's good? All right. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Really, do you mind if I stand?
Sure.
I'm an American law professor and we like to be very interactive, so I'm more comfortable standing. So I hope that's okay. It is really wonderful to be here. It's an honor. I did not expect such a big crowd, and I especially love to speak with students. I love teaching, and it is very nice to be with young people here to learn from what I have to offer, and I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts and your reactions, both from students as well as the faculty here. Thank you so much for giving your time. As he said, I've just finished a book manuscript, alhamdulillah. I've been working on this for 10 years. I actually was here in Jakarta 13 years ago when I just began the research. And so it is very nice for me to come back now that I am done, alhamdulillah, and it's a complete project now. It is now being reviewed by my publisher, so it's not on the bookshelves yet. You cannot buy it yet, but you have a sneak preview coming to hear from me. So I'm very interested in any ideas, any critique that you have, because I still have time to fix it if I've made some mistakes, because it is not on the bookshelf yet. So I really appreciate this opportunity. So am I going to be able to go through the PowerPoint myself? Does this go through or no? No. All right. So I have a PowerPoint slides. I promise it's not the boring kind of PowerPoint with just lots of words. There's moving parts and some pictures. So I think it makes it a bit more clear what I'm trying to say. So yes, perfect. So I guess I will just tell you when I want the next one. Okay. All right. So I am calling this Three Pillars Constitutionalism because I believe it is a structure of constitutionalism that is different than what we are used to in the world today. I was motivated to write this because I have become more and more frustrated when I look at Muslim governments, Islamic states all across the world today, and what I believe I am seeing is not a structure that is based on a pre-modern classical Muslim structure, but rather it is a European nation-state structure that is left over from the modern and colonial period. And so our countries are continuing in a structure that is really an imposition on our societies, not organically from the basics of Islam and usul al-fiqh and Sharia theory. So, first slide. What I want to say, start with, let's go, first one. It's not going, there we go, okay. So I start with a basic idea that I am very excited about, that we have something in the way that Sharia operates that is very unique to any other legal system. And that is the nature of ijtihad creates a particular constitutional structure because there is no other option. And that is the kind of structure that I think we have forgotten. So, next slide. It's not the next slide, it's just gonna be some moving parts. So the idea of Sharia, okay, stop, is, you know the word Sharia in Arabic means? What does it mean in Arabic? Arabic speakers. This is Azhar, you should speak some Arabic, right? So, what does it mean? Sharia, Sharia. So yell it out, come on, I'm an American law professor, you can yell it out. What? What is it? What does Sharia mean? What is ma ma'na Sharia? Bilinglesia. Condition? Shara? Way, who said way? Way. It's like a street. Like you see Sharia on the street signs in an Arabic speaking country, right? So it means street or way. So it is the way to go. This is why I have this road here, because the idea here is Sharia is the way God wants us to live. No, back it up. I don't want it to go there yet. Back it up. Yeah. So Sharia is the way that God wants us to live. And we have two sources of information of that way. We have Quran and we have Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Okay. But what happens is that these two sources do not answer every single question that we have in our lives. For one, there are new technologies that exist now that did not exist then. So can I use this medical procedure, or can I invest in the stock market, or can I drive a car? These are new problems that are not in those texts. So the scholars have to do some work going from those two texts to answering people's questions. I think I'm gonna have to just do this myself here. Here we go. There we go. All right. So what happens is they use a process of ijtihad. This is the word I said before. Y'all know this word? You've heard the word before, ijtihad? Not if you've heard the word ijtihad before. Students, wake up. You heard the word, who's heard the word ijtihad? Okay, so ijtihad, what does it sound like, the word ijtihad? Does it sound like a word you've heard before? What does it sound like? So, which means, in Arabic is what? Jihad, right? Yeah, so it comes from the same root as jihad, which means what? To do something very difficult, struggle, effort, right? So this is the legal effort, to take those sources and pull the rules from those sources to the new questions that are not answered in those sources. But it's difficult work. You have to work very hard, which is why it's called ijtihad. It comes from the same root as jahada. So the scholars, the ulama, developed many tools to help them to do this ijtihad. And I'm just going to take a little short peek. Go ahead, next one. Stop there. So these are many, many tools. In my class, I spend many weeks talking about each of these tools. So if you've taken an usul al-fiqh class, this should be familiar. There's a lot of work done on language. When is a command, and when is it just a recommendation? When is a general term meant to apply to everybody or just some subgroup of that? There's rules of grammar. There's rules of qiyas, analogy. These are tools that you can use to take one rule and then come up with new rules that were not in the original. So all of these tools, we could spend many, many years studying all of these different tools, okay? But all of this goes into the work of ijtihad. Go ahead. And the result of all of that work, again, is a collection of rules, which we refer to as, go ahead, fiqh. So who has heard that word before? Fiqh, right? You've heard this word. Fiqh, does anyone, I'm going to test you again with the Arabic. What does fiqh mean in Arabic? Faqiha yafqahu. What does it mean? You have very shy students here. I'm going to have to walk around and get in your face and say, what does it mean? Fiqh yafqahu. What does it mean? Anybody know? Arabic speakers. Anybody? Understanding. Yes, he's helping. Did you say it? Understanding? No, he's helping you. Yeah, he gave you the answer. Okay. So fiqh means understanding. So this is very, very, very important. Look at the rules that are the conclusion of the ijtihad. The word they use to refer to those rules is not sharia. The word they use to refer to those rules is fiqh, which means my understanding of sharia. Okay? They're showing that the process of ijtihad is a human process. We are human. We sometimes make mistakes. So I am not going to name the rules of my fallible human process God's law. I will say it's my understanding of God's law. That acknowledges that I could be wrong. And so I have to acknowledge that. The other thing that happens as a result of this is, go ahead, the more scholars do this work, keep going, the more different understandings you will have of the Sharia. So keep going, one more. So what happens is, if you look at Sharia as it actually exists in the world, it is not, go to the next page, it is not one collection of rules. It is actually many different schools, madhahib, of understandings of Sharia. Does this seem familiar to anybody? Have you heard of these different schools, madhab? So Shafi'i is probably the most common here in Indonesia, yes, but there is also many other schools, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, Ja'fari, right? There's many other interpretive approaches to answering these questions. And they disagree on many things. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they disagree. You may have grounds for divorce in one school that you do not have in another school. If you are in a particular circumstance, you can get divorced in the Maliki school, but not in the Hanafi school, right? Or there's the prosecution for cases of zina. There's certain basis of prosecution in one school that do not exist in the other school. I don't have time to get into all of the differences. They're actually quite interesting. And each of these arrows shows the different methodology, the different approach of understanding, that each school has its own unique approach, how they think it's best to understand Sharia. But what's very important is how they interacted with each other. They recognize that every conclusion is human and fallible. So they could be right, they could be wrong. And they took very seriously the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, who says, he's talking about a qadi, but he says the person who does ijtihad and arrives at the correct answer will receive 2 rewards, 2 barakah from God, right? Have you heard of this hadith before? So the person who does ijtihad and arrives at the correct answer will receive 2 rewards. That's nice. Yes, you get to do the right thing, get the right answer, you get 2 rewards. The person who does ijtihad and ends with the wrong answer, what do you think will happen to this person? Will he get punished, or she? Did the ijtihad got the right answer, you get 2 rewards. Do ijtihad get the wrong answer, what happens to you? Take a guess, huh? You get reward how many? 2? 1. Yeah, so you guys aren't so shy. You just, come on, pretend you're in the United States. You can talk. It's okay. So if you get the wrong answer, you still get 1 reward. So A for effort. Good job. You tried. Okay. The other thing that's very important about this is, when do we know who's getting 2 and who is getting 1? So let's say I'm not a mujtahida, but let's say I'm a mujtahida, and Brother Yusup, yes, Yusup, Brother Yusup here is also a mujtahid. And let's say I answer the question, I answer A. And Brother Yusup here answers B. Okay, so you've got ijtihad to answer B, ijtihad to answer A. Okay. I could be right, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but there's a possibility that I'm wrong, right? Okay, so how do I treat his answer, and how does he treat my answer? What should we do? Respect, because I don't know until we're both on the day of judgment who's getting 2 and who's getting 1. It's possible that I'm getting 1 and he's getting 2, so I have to be respectful. It's possible I'm wrong, but we won't know here in this lifetime. So we have to operate with respect for all the different interpretations. As long as it's a result of ijtihad, it's valid. For any Muslim to follow any ijtihad interpretation is valid as a Muslim trying to follow Sharia. Okay. That's the basic structure of how fiqh works. Because of the epistemology, it's a big English word, the epistemology just means how do you know what you know, right? So the epistemology of fiqh creates this inherent diversity. There is no other way to do fiqh without this diversity, because you start with the understanding that individuals are human, so our conclusions will be fallible, so we have to respect the different opinions. Built in. It's in the building block of the system. You cannot get rid of that unless you change the whole entire nature of ijtihad. We don't have a church to declare what Islam is for everybody. There is no singular person telling everyone how to be a Muslim. We have lots of very respected interpretations, and every Muslim can choose which one they want to follow. That is built into the system. Okay, now, how do you build a constitutional legal system with that amount of diversity? It could get very confusing, yes? I don't know, I'm following this one, my neighbor is following that one, my brother is following this one, my friend is following. It could get very confusing. How do you have a system where there are so many different interpretations? This is what I find so fascinating about Islamic constitutionalism before the modern era. The classical systems across every Muslim society that I have studied, from the Mamluks, the Ottomans, the Safavids, the Fatimids, the Mughals, every Ottoman, Abbasid, Umayyad, all of them, they all have the same features that I call the 3 pillars of Islamic constitutionalism. So, one pillar is the nature of how the source of the law is. So, one thing we have to do here is we have to think about the nature of how we think about law is very much influenced by Western European ways of thinking about law. So we have to kind of unlearn that for a second. And when you look at pre-modern Muslim legal systems, it actually looked very different from what we're used to. Okay, now we finally get to the next slide. So in pre-modern legal systems, we have 2 types of law. Not one type of law with the state, but 2 types of law. So not church and state, that wasn't the separation, but they did separate types of law. The first type we already talked a lot about. This is the fuqaha, the scholars of fiqh, doing their ijtihad reasoning, coming up with the conclusions. But because everybody is fallible, you have different interpretations. That is one type of law, fiqh, but inherently diverse. There was another type of law that was happening at the same time by a different group of people. And that was the rulers, the sultan, the caliph, the king. And these people were not doing Quranic interpretation. In fact, there was a time when they tried to control Quranic interpretation for the population, and the scholars, the ulama, pushed back, said, no, it is not up to you to tell us what the Quran means. This is the mihna, and if anyone wants to study the history, in the mihna, the scholars said, no. You ruler, you do very important things, but you do not tell us what the meaning of the Quran is. This is very important to understand when you compare us to Europe, because in Europe, they had a problem with the state church. So they had a church speaking for the religion, and then they had the state combined with the church. Now, the person telling you what to believe also has a gun and ability to put you in prison if you disagree with what they believe. And this led to the religious wars of Europe and lots of bloody things. We did not have that history. We always separated the people who are doing scriptural interpretation of Quran and Sunnah. They were not the same people who was sitting in the Sultan's palace or the Caliph's center, right? Different people. They didn't even socialize really together. It was different groups of people. So don't let anyone tell you that classical Islamic government was theocratic. That is a European thing. It is actually not what we did. We separated these two. We had other problems, but we didn't have that problem. Okay. So this is very, very important because structurally speaking, these are two types of law doing very different things in society. So the basis of siyasa, which is the state law, this is a word in Arabic they use today. I don't know if you have it in Indonesia, in Bahasa, you say siyasa for politics maybe? But you have the word here? In Arabic, they say siyasa today for like politics. But classically speaking, it was like political administration, something like that. So this is the word, there's other words, qanun, other words they use to refer to the ruler's law. But the basic idea here is that the ruler is responsible to take care of the maslaha amma, the public good of the population. So you can look at Quranic descriptions of King Solomon and Queen of Sheba, like good rulers from a Muslim perspective keep the people safe, make sure people are fair in the marketplace, they're not cheating each other, they build roads, they make sure no one's going to come and attack the people, maybe want to make sure that the laborers, the animals are not being abused. You know, we would say today things like maybe setting standards of emissions for climate control, or zoning codes for houses to make sure the houses are safe when you build them, or healthcare codes to make sure restaurants serve food that will not make you sick. These are things that are important for the public good, but it is not from scriptural interpretation ijtihad of the Quran to find out these rules, right? What is the good speed limit? You can't find that in the Quran. There's no speed limit in the Quran, but it is important to have a speed limit. It's good to have safety on the roads. Which side of the road will we drive on? I can't drive here because you drive on the other side of the road than the United States, right? Somebody has to decide which side of the road we're driving on. Otherwise, we have accidents. This is maslaha amma. These are the kinds of laws you need the state to make, but it is not about ijtihad of Quran and Sunnah. This is basic figuring out what is good for society. And it is not secular in the sense of it's not Islamic. This is just a different kind of Islamic than the fiqh is Islamic. They're both part of an overall system. Okay, now we go to this. The overall system, keep going, in Muslim societies in a pre-modern era was these two types of law working in an interdependent relationship with each other. They worked sort of with a little tension with each other, but also worked together. So I call it like a checks and balances or separation of powers, this kind of thing. Okay. This is the basic constitutional structure, these two types of law in pre-modern societies. This is very different from what we are used to in a Western context. Okay, so keep going. There are two, I'm going to just give you some examples of some of the, keep going. There's institutions that I don't have time to talk about, but this is how it operated. You have muftis from the fiqh realm giving answers to individuals asking a fiqh question. Can I dress this way? Can I marry this person? Can I eat this food? Can I leave this money to my friend when I die? These are questions you go to your fiqh expert. And remember, you can pick which one you want to follow. You don't have to follow the same one your father follows. You can pick whichever one anything that's ijtihad is legitimate. So you pick which one you follow, and these are the ones you go to for answers. The siyasa, they would have tribunals for lots of the kind of laws they were making, the zoning codes and the health codes and the military controls. They had their own muhtasib, mazalim, shurta. I don't have time to go into it, but they had their institution. In the middle were the qadis. The qadi is a unique sort of wearing two hats. The qadi is coming out of the fiqh community, so they're expert in fiqh rules, but the answers they give are enforced by the state on a person if they have an argument with someone. So let's say I have an argument with my neighbor about our property line between our two houses, and I say, well, my fiqh law says I can build here, and she says no. So we could go to a mufti to answer the question, but what if she ignores the mufti's fatwa? Now I need the state. I need the state to come in and say, move your wall. I'm gonna take some money from you if you don't fix this. This is where the qadi comes in. This is a fiqh expert who knows the law from the fiqh realm, the law that is not written by the state. It's written by the independent private scholars, but the ruler, the state, will enforce the decisions of the qadi that is based on the fiqh to resolve people's disputes. Okay, it's a very rough summary of all of the institutions of the legal systems in these systems before the modern era. Okay. There's one more thing that people often wonder, and that is, how did we control the kings and the caliphs and the sultans from doing bad things, right? I just said they're responsible for maslaha amma, but what if they tried to do something that's outside of Sharia? They want to kill their brother to stay into power, something like that, right? How do we control that? Well, in the past, they had a scholar from the fiqh community, so a scholar, but a very high level mujtahid, someone who do very, very sophisticated legal reasoning, who advised the sultan. It depends on the place and the time. They sometimes were called the chief qadi, chief mufti. In Ottomans, it was called Sheikh al-Islam. But it's a person, usually one person, who is the advisor for the ruler, who basically says, no, you can't kill your brother. That's not okay. You might want to do that. You might think it's good for the society. You can't do that. And sometimes the rulers listened. Sometimes they didn't. Most of the time they actually did. So they would, if they want to start a military campaign, or they want to do some price settings in the marketplace, or all of the laws that are siyasa laws, the Sheikh al-Islam would advise the ruler saying, no, you can't do that, or yes, that's okay to do that. Okay. Are you all following me? Am I speaking too fast? It's okay? Too fast? Okay, I'll try to slow down. She's doing it live interpretation, not AI? You're not doing AI interpretation? It's a live human, huh? Okay, all right. Live human, a fallible human. Okay, who I have to be very nice to. Okay, all right. So I will summarize because I was speaking too fast. In general, before the modern era, Muslim societies did not operate with one type of law, they operated with two types of law. One type was based on ijtihad from private ulama, fuqaha, doing interpretation of Quran and Sunnah, and coming up with rules that depends on your school, the rules will differ. That's why you have different madhab, Hanafi, Shafi, Hanbali, whatever. The other type of law was done by the state, and it was based not on scriptural interpretation of Quran or Sunnah. That was not their job. In fact, when they tried to do that, people said, no, this is not your job. It's dangerous for the person with the guns to also tell you what to believe. Very dangerous. Muslims understood this way before Europe figured this out. Okay. So the basis of the ruler's lawmaking was not about interpretation of Quran and Sunnah. It was purely based on what is the maslaha amma, what is in the public good for the society. What is the good way, which side of the road shall we drive on? What is the good prices we should set in the marketplace? Should we build some more wells so people can get to the Hajj? Should we build some schools? Today we would say, should we control the regulation of busy streets because people need open roads so they don't get sick? These kinds of things. Okay. Now, how do you control if the siyasa was going to go too far? There was this person that usually advised the ruler sort of in the court saying, this is not really shara'i. You should really not do this, or okay, good, you can do this perfectly fine. Okay. That is the structure before the modern era. Now, everything changes with colonialism. Keep going. So this is a map. You can't see all the details, but it's all basically color-coded to show you that virtually every Muslim majority land was either directly colonized by a European power, or if they were not directly controlled and colonized, they were very much pressured by military and economic pressure to transform their societies to match what Europe expected. Okay? So what happens is you have these Muslim majority lands are now under the control of the British, the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, all over the Muslim world. India, all over Africa, Indonesia, all the way North Africa, up to, southern Russia. Everything is now completely a different situation. I don't have time to go into what happened, why, how did we mess up so badly, but the result is that these systems were embedded into the economic, the political, the educational, the legal systems of these countries for decades, sometimes centuries, so that when they finally get independence, the system is completely different. The system is no longer what we are used to, which is this, what I just showed you. This is no longer the system. What happens from the European perspective, they don't want all of these diverse fiqh, it's too confusing. They want to maintain mostly economic control. So the state is now under the control of the European power. So that becomes the main law. It takes over the space. So the fiqh realm starts to disappear, push off to the side. Go ahead and push. It goes again. It's there, but people don't see it very clearly. It's off in the private sector. It is not built into the constitutional structure of the system. Keep going. The siyasa, keep going. Basically, keep going. I need to do it myself. There. It is now much bigger than it used to be. If you saw it, it kind of grew a little bit there. And it is now sort of state law. Now we have state law judges who are now appointed. They apply the law that the state, now parliament or Congress, is now making. And then what becomes very interesting, when you have Muslim population saying, hey, they took our Sharia away from us. How do we get it back? My personal frustration is they did not go back to the old structure. What tends to happen is they look to this structure to see how can we put some fiqh back into this structure. So the constitutional structure, think about a house. The building of the house is a different building than we used to have. And now we're trying to put new things into this house. Or another way I like to say, it's like putting Eid decorations on a Christmas tree. It's not essentially the Islamic structure. It's a European structure that we're trying to sort of dress up to look Muslim. And this is typical. Each place is slightly different in how they do this, but in general, what happens is, go ahead, pieces of the fiqh, keep going, will become legislated or given over to the judges to incorporate if it's not straight up legislation through statutes. And then you have some version of Sharia court judges or qadis who are then employed to apply only just that law. Sorry. So now, this is the typical, again, this is a generalization, but typically Muslim legal systems around the world today are some version of this. General state law, that is the main primary law of the land, with pieces of selected fiqh rules in various parts. Typically, that's what we see. I don't like this. I'm very frustrated by this. I like the diversity. I like that the different interpretations of fiqh can work as a marketplace to pressure each other. If I choose to go to the Hanafi school because it's better for women, then maybe the Malikis and the Hanbalis will listen and say, oh, we're losing all our customers to the Hanafis. Maybe we should do some ijtihad, new interpretation, and get them back. And that's historically what actually happened. There were not just 5 schools of fiqh in our history. There were hundreds of schools that mostly died off because they were not popular. People didn't go to them. So the same thing should happen now. We should be able to go and say, this interpretation works for me better. This interpretation works for Indonesia better than that interpretation works for Pakistan. People should be able to use their right, their religious freedom as Muslims to select which fiqh they want to follow. And when you do that, the fiqh works as a marketplace of competition that responds to the needs of the people, and it naturally grows organically with the population's needs. The scholars do new ijtihad to respond to new questions, and what used to be the dominant majority opinion changes, and now the minority opinion becomes the dominant one because of this back and forth with the population and the qadis applying it. That's how it worked historically. We have lost a lot of this when you don't see fiqh diversity prominent in the system today. Like I said, it's a generalization of all the different countries, but generally I see a version of this. Okay, so now, what can we do different? Finally, we're at my proposal. Finally, akhiran. Okay, so I have 3, there's a lot of words here. I will show you a slide for each one. I have 3 essential elements. When I look at Muslim history, I see 3 common features repeated over and over and over again. Not in the specific application, but the idea exists every place I look throughout the 1400 years of Muslim history up until the modern period. The first one is this, that the state law, the siyasa, the entity that was doing the law of the state, has to be based on maslahah amma, has to be doing the public good, okay? So historically, we would basically see, okay, stop. We would see the ruler left to decide what it is. We would basically, the fuqaha said, okay, you decide what is in the maslaha amma, we're not going to argue with you. Today, we could use democratic mechanisms. This is back to your point earlier about how does democracy fit into this? Keep going. We could use democracy to determine what is in the public good for each society. Doesn't have to be a king anymore. Now we can vote. And by the way, if you're just deciding what is in the public good, you don't need any fiqh knowledge. You don't need to go to a school where you learn usul fiqh. All you need to know is what's a good healthcare system? What's the best way to build the roads safely? What is safe food preservation in our country? What is going to keep us from global warming? Should we sign a nuclear arms treaty? Is that good for society? These are questions you don't need to be a Muslim to answer. You just need to be a good scientist or empirical social researcher or something like that. So that means everybody can be part of this part of the lawmaking of the system. Muslim, non-Muslim, everybody. All you're doing is you're just looking at empirical scientific information. What's going to be the good rules for our society? Which side of the road should we drive on? Let's talk about that. Do I need to be a Muslim to decide that? No. Do I need to be a faqih to decide that? No. Anybody can figure that out. Okay, so this is the first piece. The historical was the state has to make law based on public good, and they left it to the ruler. Today, same principle, but we can use a new mechanism to decide what is in the public good. This, again, this is not a secular thing to do. This is an Islamic duty of the state, but it is Islamic in the principle that we see in the Quran about what good rulers do. Good rulers, Sulaiman took care of his people. Queen of Sheba, Bilqis, took care of her people. This is the principle. It's still Islamic, it's just not fiqh Islamic. Okay. Second pillar that I see is that in the pre-modern system, each individual Muslim could choose which fiqh rule they want to follow. Okay? And by the way, because they had this fiqh diversity in Muslim lands, Muslim-ruled lands, it meant that non-Muslim communities, like the Jewish community, the Zoroastrian community, the Hindu community, the Coptic Christian community, they could live under Muslim rule by their own laws. It was not a problem for Muslim sultans to say, okay, fine, where's the rabbi? Tell me which halakha you want me to enforce. I will enforce your law. This is for your community. And the Coptic Christians in Egypt and Hindus in India, this was not a problem for Muslim rulers to accommodate for other communities to have their own law applied to them. Because we already had different Muslim laws applied to different Muslims, not a big problem. It is very different in a Western system where you have one law of the land for everybody. That becomes very difficult to then have these diversity of communities. But Muslims figured out how to do diversity and pluralism in a way that I think nobody else has figured out. And so it was built into our constitutional structure, so it had to accommodate that. Okay, how do we do that today? So my proposal is the same principle. Individuals should be able to choose which non-state law they want to follow. That's fiqh for Muslims, choose your madhab. But for non-Muslim, it could be your religious law of your community, okay? How does it look? Okay, go ahead. So you have two types of law in the society. You've got the state law. Okay, stop for a second. You have the state law made by the state. Now, if it's a democratic state, it's democratically chosen. So I have a voice in the laws that are happening there. But what if, let's say I'm a Hanafi and I want to follow Hanafi law when I get divorced. And the law that's been made by the state doesn't happen to be the Hanafi rules of divorce. And I feel like, you know, when I meet God on the day of judgment, I want to follow Hanafi law with my divorce. I want to know that I'm divorced in the eyes of God according to the fiqh I follow. And doing it by the state law, I'm not going to feel comfortable. So I should be able to choose to follow the Hanafi school or the Shafi school or whatever it is that I want. And I should be able to follow it without making you follow it too, right? If you only have one law for everybody at the state level, then if I have it for me, it has to be for everybody. But in the pre-modern system, I could choose mine and my neighbor could choose theirs, and that was fine. So the way I would suggest we do it is we always have the option of every person to go to use the state law if they want. If they do not want, they can opt out. Okay, now go to the next one, to choose a different fiqh rule of their choice. So I'm getting married, I'm getting divorced, or I'm investing my money in something. I want a fatwa, or I want a qadi to actually adjudicate the case. I can choose which fiqh rule I want to follow. So if you look at, keep going one more. If you look at how everybody in society is living, you're going to have a combination of people following the different rules that are in the system. You have some people following the state law, some people opting out. In the United States, we have a version of this. It's called alternative dispute resolution or mediation. So if I get divorced, I might want to have the state court adjudicate my case and I go to trial and they will apply the state law. But what if I can just work it out with my ex-husband, with a mediator? We can make whatever rules work for us that work the best for us. It doesn't have to be the state law. And the mediator can work it out. And the judge is very happy to sign because we worked it out without taking up his time. So this is very similar to that. I opt out of the state law into the fiqh school of my choice. The challenge is the population has to know what are the options. So we need to bring back an education of our fiqh diversity, of the nature of ijtihad as one of our strengths of Islam, not something to hide and pretend we messed up. This is actually one of the beauties, I think, that allows for diverse communities to live with each other without trying to control each other. We have respect for each other's interpretation. So the society would look around at, I have this law apply to me, my next door neighbor has another one, my Jewish friend has halakha applied, no problem. Okay, so that's the second pillar, almost done. Third one. Remember that Shaykh al-Islam who was advising the ruler, hey, you can't murder your brother. Hey, you shouldn't really set the prices. People can't afford that. You know, these kinds of advice. Sorry? 5 minutes. Okay, good. So that is how they had like a boundary around siyasa. There was a sharia boundary. Importantly, that's not the same thing as a fiqh boundary. A sharia boundary is much more sort of theoretically sophisticated. Fiqh is the particular rules of interpretation, but the boundary around siyasa was sort of higher than that. If you think about it for just 1 second, that has to be the answer. Because if fiqh was the boundary for siyasa, then you are going to be very limited in what the state can do. Because if the state wants to, let's say, make a laws of divorce for the state, if fiqh is the boundary for that law, there are multiple different grounds for divorce in the different schools. So you cannot say it's contrary to the Maliki school if it is the Hanafi rule. I mean, it is, but can the Hanafi rule control what the state does? Because it's so, you understand what I'm saying? If you say contrary to Sharia means the same thing as contrary to fiqh, you then have to ask the question, which fiqh? So if you pass a law that is contrary to the Maliki rules of divorce, does that mean it's not okay if it is the same as the Hanafi rules of divorce? So the boundary of siyasa cannot be the rules of fiqh. It has to be something more sophisticated. And that's what the Shaykh al-Islam, if you look at their rulings, they did things that were not the same rule as the fiqh rule, but they were appealing to a general higher understanding of Sharia, the general spirit, if you will, of Sharia. So that is very important for us moving today. Many Muslim countries today have some kind of provision in their constitution or their laws that says, you know, no law can be contrary to Sharia, something like that. But they're very vague on what does that mean exactly, and everyone disagrees, and it's confusing. So I propose that, that we have some mechanism to review state lawmaking. So like a council or a review or a committee or a constitutional court or something. Each country can decide what they want. Some maqasid review board, let's say, okay? And they would then review the state law. Okay, back it up. Okay. The basis of the review is not fiqh, but the maqasid. What are the maqasid? The maqasid are the purposes of Sharia. These are developed by the fuqaha many, many centuries ago. All the schools agree on the same basic 6. There's some new reform ideas about adding some and tweaking them, but basically it's familiar to you. You will probably remember the basic maqasid are preservation of religion, of life, of family, of intellect, of wealth, and some would say dignity or honor. These are the basic principles, the purposes that the scholars said all of Sharia supports these principles, these purposes. This is a very useful review for Sharia, for siyasa, because it's much higher than the particular individual rules of fiqh. But it is still shari'i. It's just shari'i at a much more higher ijtihad, sophisticated level. And in fact, if you look at history, that is kind of what the Shaykh al-Islam was doing. They were appealing to this higher concepts. So I would say we need some kind of a council or a board or something to, after the state law has been made, it's been determined that it's in the public good, fine, it's made. Then you have some entity say, okay, let's make sure it doesn't violate any of these rules. So my example, anyone watch Marvel movies, the Avengers? Yeah, okay. So you guys know Thanos? You know Thanos? What is Thanos? Thanos was worried about overpopulation, right? He was worried about too many people going to eat all the food, and we're all going to die, right? What was his solution to the problem of overpopulation? What did he think we had to do? Kill half the population. Okay? He thought that was in the public good. He was in the movies, not in the comics, it's different. But in the movies, he thought, okay, we have a problem. There's too many people. We need to solve this problem. So you could make the argument that he was doing something in the maslaha amma. He's at least saving half the population. Okay, so you could imagine, let's say Thanos is president, and he passes that law, or we all as a democracy pass a law, Thanos signs the law. We all say, okay, yeah, sure, we should kill half the population. All right. Now, in my system, it will go to a maqasid review. And now we have to ask the question, does this law that everybody seems to think is in the public good, does this law violate any of the 5 maqasid? Does it? Does it violate the preservation of life? Yes, it does. Okay, sorry, we have to strike that down. It's a good idea, maybe, but it violates one of the 5 purposes, so therefore it cannot be a law that stands in this system. It's not checking against fiqh rules. It's looking at the basic big idea of preservation of life. Other examples might be something that preserves dignity of people or intellect, something like that. These will be the other kinds of checking. I can think of Q&A, I can think of some other examples. So if it passes though, let's say there's a law that passes and you do a maqasid research, does it violate preservation of life, family, wealth, religion? No, okay, good to go. There's no ijtihad fiqh interpretation involved here. There's ijtihad, but a very high level. It's not looking at the fiqh books, all those different colored books. The review has nothing to do with the fiqh doctrine that people are living their life by. The maqasid review happens at a much higher level to make sure that you're thinking about a different kind of law. You're reviewing siyasa. Siyasa does a different thing for society than fiqh. Fiqh is helping every individual Muslim live. What do I eat? How do I dress? Who do I marry? Where do I go? How do I, live? Siyasa is trying to make massive policy for a large population. The Sharia job of siyasa is a very different job. So the review has to be a very different kind of review than the fiqh rules that are made for individual people. Okay, that is my proposal. How would it change existing societies? Go ahead. I think it would look very different, but it would not be that difficult to actually implement. It would feel different because structurally, keep going. Structurally, you're looking at a system that has more than one kind of law, that is acknowledged in the system. It's not, by the way, hidden off to the side. It's built into the system and everybody knows about it and people can access it. As opposed to where we have fiqh rules now, which is basically kind of, people don't really know about the diversity of fiqh. They're kind of not aware, right? And the state is kind of controlling which interpretation gets applied. And I think that that's not the best way to do Sharia going into the future. So the system would look different, but structurally, I can answer in Q&A. I don't think it actually would be that hard to shift in too many of Muslim societies. I think we have the tools to do it. It would just be a little bit of a change of how we think about things. And that's it for my presentation. I'm looking forward to all of your thoughts and critique. And I'm sorry if I spoke too fast. I wanted to stay within the time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Quraishi-Landes, for the insightful lecture and remarkable presentations. So I observed several key points from the presentation of the professor. So there's a frustration. Okay. Okay. Okay, I would like to continue. I observed several crucial points from during your 40-minute presentation, including your frustration about the structure and system of Islamic constitution in various countries in the world, and then from your historical perspective, from the pre-modern stage to the colonialism, and then after the independence, and everything has changed after that. And then you provide about 3 pillars of Islamic constitution that that relevant to this day in terms of a modern democratic way in many countries in the world. Thank you, Professor, and let's give a round of applause to Professor once more. And following that, I would like to move on our second speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Yusup Hidayat, and he will share a presentation to respond to Professor Quraishi-Landes' proposed book. Yeah, so Professor will publish her own book, and perhaps next year maybe. Inshallah. Okay. Dr. Hidayat, the floor is yours for the next 20 minutes, and allow me to provide a reminder 5 minutes before the time is closed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Faiz. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Asifa, for your presentation. I think this is interesting presentation, yes, from Dr. Asifa. I think this is the moment to discuss about his proposal in model of Islamic constitutionalism in modern Muslim state. Yeah, I think we want to. I want to explore first the my thought in this case. Yeah, there are 3 categories of law in Islam. Rizka, right? The first is what is called Sharia. We know that Dr. Asifa say also about Sharia, namely the decrees of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala which are related to the action of mukallaf or legal subject in the form of orders, prohibition or choices. Jadi tadi sudah jelas ya, Syariah itu memang ketentuan dari Allah ya. Itu mutlak yang itu harus diikuti berdasarkan perintah, larangan ataupun pilihan. Ya, tadi syariah kan sudah dijelaskan tentang syariah. Artinya jalan, the way, ya, the way that we must follow. Ya, jalan yang harus kita ikuti. Ya. The second is fikih. You know, just now Dr. Asifa also say fikih. Fikih understanding ya is defined as the understanding of scholars or mujtahid about syariah law extracted from the detailed syariah argument. Jadi tadi dari syariah. Kemudian lakukan istihad itu semacam mengarahkan segala tenaga tadi itu ya, mengarahkan segala tenaga untuk mendapatkan rumusan hukum. Nah, rumusan hukumnya itulah fikih. The product of istihad is fikih from syariah, ya, dari dalil-dalil syar'i tadi, ya. The third is siyasah. Nah, yang dibicarakan tadi lebih banyak siyasah tadi. Siyasah which is the implementation of Islamic law in legislation. Jadi siyasah itu lebih luas, lebih mengikat banyak orang, mengikat banyak pihak. Nah, fikih itu ada madhab-madhab. Just now, madhab-madhab ada fikih Hanafi, Maliki, and Syafi'i, macam-macam. But siyasa is for all community, for all nation. Ya, jadi berlaku untuk semua masyarakat yang ada dalam negara itu. In the context of siyasah, it is necessary to understand the pattern of the relationship between the state and religion. Ini hasil pemikiran, jadi ada pola hubungan antara negara dengan agama dalam negara-negara ini, terutama di negara-negara muslim ya. There are basically 3 patterns of relationship between religion and the state in the Islamic context. Ya. The first is a formal relationship pattern, where the relationship between religion and the state is united both formally and substantively. Jadi ada satu bentuk negara di mana hukum agama dan hukum negara itu bersatu. Ya, ini contohnya Arab Saudi. The example is Saudi Arabia. Formally and substantively is united. Ya. The second is a spirit relationship pattern between religion and the state, where state law is completely separate from religious law. Jadi bentuk yang kedua itu terpisah antara hukum negara dengan hukum agama sama sekali. Nah, ini contohnya Turki sekuler, Kemal Atatürk dulu, memisahkan antara hukum agama dengan hukum negara. Itu terpisah sama sekali. Nah, Lex Turki ya, seperti Turki dulu ya. The third is relationship pattern that emphasizes the relationship between the state and religion in substance ya. Yang ketiga adalah pola hubungan di mana negara dengan agama itu menyatu hukumnya itu. Hanya saja tidak secara formal, not formally, but as substantive. Substansinya saja. nilai-nilai dasarnya saja itu menyatu, ya. Itu menyatu, ya. Nah, pikiran Gus Dur seperti itu, menyatu antara hukum negara dengan hukum agama, tetapi pada substansinya, tidak pada formalnya. The first pattern is that formally and in the substance, state religious regulation are derived from religious law, derived from religious law. Jadi kalau seandainya hukum yang pertama itu dasarnya itu dari hukum agama, ya. Thus in Islam the main source of law are the Quran and Hadis. Tentu sumber utamanya adalah Al-Quran dan Hadis, ya. Epistemologically, secara epistemologi, kalau secara epistemologi itu artinya sumber keilmuannya, sumber hukumnya, the main reference for the formation of state law is the Quran and Hadis, yaitu Al-Quran dan Hadis. For the second pattern, untuk pola yang kedua, state law is more produced by the creation of the human mind. Jadi negara yang kedua, bentuk kedua itu tentu hukumnya itu berdasarkan kesepakatan masyarakat, rasionalitas masyarakat. Jadi tidak terkait sama sekali itu dengan hukum agama. Epistemologically, the main reference is the human ratio, ya. Sementara the third pattern is a pattern that mediate from the two previous pattern, where this pattern presupposes a relationship between religion and the state, only that the relationship is substantive and not formal. Yang ketiga itu hubungannya ada antara negara dengan agama, tetapi secara substansi saja, ya, tidak dalam bentuk formal. Of course, epistemologically, the referent in determining state law or constitution is the substance of religious teaching. It just that the way to formulate it uses philosophy through legal theory approach known as usul fiqh, ya. Memang pendekatan dalam menjelaskan hukum itu harus ada metodologinya. Nah, metodologi yang dikenal itu adalah usul fiqh. Seperti tadi dijelaskan, nah ijtihad itu tadi seperti ada qiyas, ada ijma, ada istihsan, ya, ada macam-macam, itu metodologi. Itu metode perumusan hukum. Karena bagaimana hukum itu, contohnya hukum sholat itu wajib dari mana? Nggak ada dalam Al-Quran sholat itu wajib. Kita memahaminya berdasarkan teori tadi. Teori ijtihad tadi. Oh, itu kata-kata aqimus sholawatuz zakat itu perintah. Nah, asal perintah itu adalah wajib, maka hukumnya adalah wajib. Nah, itulah yang dinamakan tadi ijtihad tadi, ya, metodenya itu, metode merumuskannya. Karena tanpa merumuskan itu orang kesulitan. Makanya orang kembali pada Al-Quran dan Hadis itu bukan berarti harus dia kembali begitu saja, ada metodologinya. Nah, ini adalah peran mujtahid atau ulama, as Dr. Asifa said just now, ya, itu ijtihad. Indonesia. Sayang kalau nggak dipahami masalahnya. Ya. The popular usul fiqh method is solving contested issues is the maqasid syariah method. Ya. Jadi memang untuk menyelesaikan persoalan kenegaraan nggak bisa pendekatan fikih, as Dr. Asifa said also, not just fikih approach, but must be higher than fikih. Ya. Maqasid syariah is higher than fikih, ya. Maqasid syariah itu filosofinya dari apa? Dari usul fikih tadi, dan itu lebih tinggi dari fikih. Karena fikih itu adalah produknya saja. Sementara maqasid syariah itu adalah industrinya, teknologinya, mesinnya. Nah, bahasa sederhana itu, dia adalah mesinnya, ya. The maqasid syariah method is method that formulate the law by emphasizing the objective of the law itself. Tetapi maqasid syariah itu lebih tinggi lagi. Kalau tadi metodenya kebahasaan, aqimus shalah itu metode kebahasaan, tapi kalau maqasid syariah itu lebih kepada tujuan hukum itu sendiri apa. Jadi kalau ada sekarang tuh ada metode hermeneutik, ya, memahami apa sih yang dimaksud oleh pengucap itu, maksud oleh Tuhan itu sendiri, tapi saya kira terlalu jauh kalau ke metode hermeneutik itu. In the context of legal classification, the law related to the pattern of relation between human is included in worship that is makulatul makna, or that can be accepted by the man. For this reason, the maqasid syariah approach is an acceptable approach. Jadi kalau berbicara urusan yang berkaitan dengan muamalah, hubungan antara manusia, ekonomi, politik, budaya, hukum Islam juga bicara tentang makulatul makna. Sesuatu itu masuk akal atau tidak? Ya. Karena kalau nggak masuk akal berarti tidak sesuai dengan syariah. Tapi kalau ibadah nggak bisa makulatul makna, ghairu makulatul makna. Urusan ibadah tuh nggak masuk akal kadang-kadang. Kok disuruh sholat gitu? Kok harus menghadap ke kiblat? Itu nggak bisa kita pakai akal gitu. ya. Tapi urusan ekonomi ya, urusan politik itu sesuai dengan akal pikiran kita. Kecuali ada yang dilarang. Makanya kalau itu sesuai dengan Islam atau tidak, ada nggak yang dilarang nggak gitu? Kalau nggak dilarang berarti boleh. Prinsipnya begitu, ya. Makulatul makna, sesuatu itu masuk akal atau tidak. The three pillars of us or Dr. Asifa is very interesting to study. The first pillar is related to the orientation of state management where the public good is prioritized. Saya kira ini menjadi common sense ya, bahwa kalau itu saya katakan tadi karena makulatul makna, maka kalau seandainya kebijakan umum itu menguntungkan masyarakat, maka itu sesuai dengan Islam. Maka katakan maslahat tu amah. Kalau bentam itu kan semakin banyak manfaatnya maka semakin baik kan gitu kan. Semakin menguntungkan semakin baik kan gitu hukum itu kan. Nah, maka dalam Islam juga seperti itu sebenarnya. Kalau kita mengikuti konteks maqasid syariah tadi. Kalau seandainya itu menguntungkan masyarakat, maka itu lebih menguntungkan kan itu. Itu dibolehkan kan begitu. Ya. In the theory of legal objective or maqasid syariah, there are three level of legal objective, namely maslahah daruriyah or primary maslahah, maslahah hajiyah or secondary maslahah, and maslahah tahsiniyah or tertiary maslahah. Jadi ada maslahah yang sifatnya itu adalah darurat, primer, ada yang sifatnya sekunder, ada yang sifatnya tahsini ataupun tertier. Kalau orang nggak bisa makan, nah itu udah daruriyah itu, ya. Dia harus makan, walaupun dia harus makan yang kemudian diharamkan, tetapi karena kayak vaksin kemarin, Lex vaksin, vaksin itu haram, ya, karena ada komponen babi, tetapi karena doruriyat maka dia dibolehkan. Hukumnya haram, tapi karena itu argumentasi ulama begitu ya. Jadi kalau fikihnya standar aja nggak bisa memahami itu kan gitu. The emphasis of the three level lies on a five thing in the classical view. Nah, tadi yang disebutkan oleh Dr. Asifa di classical view, namely maintaining religion, maintaining the soul, maintaining the man, maintaining offspring, and maintaining property. Ya, lima kebutuhan pokok tadi yang disebutkan. Tetapi while the contemporary scholar add it by maintaining al-irad or human dignity. Jadi kalau kemarin itu ada 5 kebutuhan pokok, tapi sekarang ditambahkan lagi yaitu hibdul al-irad, human dignity. Contemporary legal thinker Jasir Auda, saya criticize this classification which is still individual by expanding to it to cover broader interest. Jadi pemikir kontemporer namanya Auda itu mengembangkan dari 5 hal pokok atau 6 yang sifatnya individual menurut dia. Nah, jadi ini sebenarnya saling berkontribusi ya. Antara pemikiran Dr. Asifa and Jasir Auda ya. Jadi I think it's very good and has relationship I think ya. Sub-guiding religion is expanding to include protection of freedom of belief and religion ya. Jadi ada penjagaan terhadap agama itu dikembangkan menjadi kebebasan beragama ya. Kemudian menjaga safeguarding the soul by protecting human values, menjaga jiwa itu menjaga hak asasi, hak manusia contohnya. Safeguarding the man by protecting freedom of thought and intellectual development, menjaga akal pikiran itu dengan menjaga memberikan kebebasan berpikir dan juga pengembangan intelektualitas. Jadi sifatnya lebih umum lagi. Safeguarding offspring by protection the family, menjaga keturunan menjadi menjaga keluarga. Safeguarding property by realizing social solidarity, menjaga harta menjadi menciptakan solidaritas sosial. Safeguarding self-respect by protecting human right, menjaga human dignity ataupun harga diri menjadi menjaga hak-hak dasar manusia. Ya. The existence of legal plurality that is not accommodated by the state as a whole is especially true for countries where the differences in madhab cannot be accommodated in state law, because in Indonesia Shafi'i is very dominant, yeah? So it is just one madhab. But in Salat, for example, there is Hambali, there is Shafi'i, and also the other. But in the other, Shafi'i is very dominant in Indonesia. Yeah, not like in Iran, Ja'fari and Sunni, or Iraq, Sunni and Shi'i. In Indonesia, Ja'fari is just very little, yeah, very little Ja'fari. Ya, Ja'fari itu madhab dalam Syiah. Ya, tadi disebutkan Ja'fari Syiah. Kalau di Sunni itu kan ada Maliki, Hambali, Syafi'i, Hanafi. Tapi di Syiah itu dominan Ja'fari. Syiah itu tidak menerima hadis-hadis yang diriwayatkan oleh terutama Bukhari, Muslim ataupun dari 4 khalifah itu. Dia hanya menerima dari keluarganya Nabi, ya, dari Aisyah itu, ya, Hasan, Husain itu Syiah dominannya seperti itu. Makanya kalau puasa mereka 10 menit setelah kita buka baru mereka buka puasa, ya, karena berbeda. For Indonesian itself can be overcome considering that the views of the mazhab are not too sharp. The Indonesian Ulama Council itself a representing of mass organization in Indonesia, so that legal certainty can be obtained by Muslim Indonesia. In cases in economic Sharia, for example, Majelis Ulama has decided for fatwa, ya, and it is unite in fatwa. Jadi Indonesia lebih diuntungkan karena ada Majelis Ulama. Jadi kalau ada hal-hal yang berbeda itu Majelis Ulama lebih terlibat dan itu tidak menciptakan konflik banyak di Indonesia. Alhamdulillah di Indonesia tidak terlalu konflik, ya. For the third pillar related to Sharia review, whether a constitution is in accordance with Sharia by making maqasid Sharia as indicator is logic. However, of course, this must consider the spirit of maqasid Sharia itself, where the 5 maqasid Sharia or 6 in the view of contemporary jurists can be implemented in the constitution. Indonesia as Muslim majority country does not label itself as religious or secular state. Religious values are present in the state philosophy and are also explicitly stated in the constitution. Nah, Indonesia ini punya keunikan. Jadi inilah terima kasih kita kepada founding fathers, ya, di mana konstitusi kita memang tidak mengatakan bahwa itu negara agama, tetapi juga tidak mengatakan itu negara sekuler. It is clear state in our state philosophy that is related to the concrete Sharia theory. This is religious protection. Not only its individualism, but the freedom to embrace religion is given. Likewise, human values of unity, the liberation of democracy and justice are the implementation of religious values as well as national values that are not only individual, national, but also global. Jadi Indonesia saya kira sudah melangkah lebih jauh terkait dengan bagaimana implementasi nilai-nilai Islam, ya, nilai maqasid syariah di dalam konstitusi kita. Jelas sekali dalam preambul, ya, nanti the preamble of Indonesian Constitution clearly state that the purpose of the state is to protect the entire nation, the welfare of the nation life, to educate citizens and to participate in world peace based on independent, lasting peace and social justice. Indonesia is thus very clear that colonialism in the world must be abolished because it is not in accordance with human values and the values of justice. That is why Indonesia is very clear in instance supporting the Palestinian people to fight to liberate themselves and their country. Okay. In closing, I am reminded of the profound word of Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim, a leading legal expert, who once said, "Sharia is the basic building block, placed on wisdom and human welfare. In this world and the hereafter, the whole of Sharia is justice, mercy, wisdom, and goodness. Therefore, if there is a rule that replaces justice with injustice, mercy and its opposite, public benefit with mafsadat, or wisdom with nonsense, then the rule is not part of the Sharia, even though it is claimed to be so according to some interpretation." Jadi memang Indonesia ini saya kira we want to learn from Dr. Asifa. Ini apakah mungkin is Indonesia is how to implement your idea in Indonesia, because I think Indonesia is majority Muslim, yeah, but we have constitution and we have, as you say, democracy, not opposite to maqasid Sharia, and I think that our constitution it not opposite to maqasid Sharia. Also the other law, for example, law of consumer. It is suitable with Islam. The acts of human right, for example, I study about the acts of human right in Indonesia, Act number 39 1990. Yeah, I think this is from with usul fiqh and also of maqasid Sharia. It's not opposite with Islam. So how is your opinion with Indonesian constitution on also the act of in Indonesia? Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Could I get my slides back up? Could you bring mine back up? So, I like Indonesia very much. I'm very comfortable here. I think that the laws that you have implemented create a very open-minded society. I think it's very welcoming to a lot of different ways of life. I think I like how women are respected here. There's a lot of things I like about the actual laws here. But that's a different question than do I like the structure of how the laws are made? And I'm a constitutional theorist. And so I'm not thinking about the actual conclusions of the rules. I'm thinking about how the house was built. The conclusions of the rules are what the furniture that you put inside the house. That's fine. I like your furniture. It's very nice furniture. But I'm interested in how the house was built. And I'm concerned that the structure of how the house was built has some features that could be dangerous if different people put different furniture in there. Okay? So I want to go to, you said that here, I'll go. It's toward the end here. Can I just do this? So there was a lot about maqasid, and I know maqasid is so popular. There was a time, every time I talked to someone doing a PhD, I said, what are you working on your PhD? They said maqasid. It was a very popular topic. I think it still is. And I don't want people to confuse my idea of maqasid with the popular idea of maqasid. So I think of it very differently than, which is the one I want to talk about here. This one. The last one. There we go. Okay. So if you look at this picture, the way you describe Indonesia, and I think other countries similarly, remember, here, now I have to go back to this. Sorry, ignore, close your eyes for a second. Okay, wait, there. Okay, now open your eyes. Okay, so remember I said this is how most Muslim countries think about law now. It's what is the state law? And the concern that has happened since independence is how do we make that more Islamic? So one of the ways is what I described here. Let's just take a few fiqh rules and put it in. Another way is to think about all state lawmaking through the lens of maqasid. So let's not worry about the particular fiqh rules in very detail as a matter of state law. Let's just think about what serves the preservation of life, what serves human dignity, what serves the protection of wealth. And because those are all maqasid sharia, if we make laws that protect wealth, then that will be an Islamic law, and so therefore it's okay to legislate. So maqasid becomes a mechanism at the lawmaking level, at the legislative level. So you have to think about maqasid when you are legislating your laws to make sure the laws are okay. It's part of the lawmaking step. I don't put it there. I want the lawmaking step to have nothing to do. Close your eyes, nobody look, close. Hold on, close your eyes. Okay, now, open. Okay, this step of lawmaking, I don't want that to have any Islamic usul fiqh, ijtihad skills at all. Anybody can be part of lawmaking in my system. You don't need to know anything about maqasid. You just need to know what's a good healthcare system, what's a good, how to build the road safely. You don't need to think, is this in the service of the protection of the wealth of the society in an Islamic? Anybody can be a part of that. Where does maqasid come? It comes after the state has decided this is going to serve the public good. It's the Thanos check, right? He thought it was in the public good to kill half the population. Now we're going to check it. Okay, so this is where maqasid come for me. It's after the law is made. That's when you have the experts who have fiqh expertise, not in sharia, high level sharia expertise, not at the lawmaking level. I'll give you another example of how this is different. So, for example, let's say a Muslim society wants to make a law. Am I as interesting as the Instagrams that are happening back there? It seems like everyone's somewhere else right now. Okay, all right. If I'm in a society and we want to make a law to prohibit race discrimination, you can't stop someone from renting your house because they're black. That would be wrong, okay? We want to make a law that prohibits race discrimination. That's a good law to make. I think it's in the public good to make that, yeah? I think so. You should not be turned away from school because you're the wrong color. That's a good law. Okay. If maqasid is the basis of lawmaking, you have to think where in the maqasid is this law a service of? You have to dig around to see how is this supporting maqasid. You probably can find one. Probably it is a protection of human dignity. Probably the honor, the protection of honor. Probably, yeah, okay, it serves human dignity. But there may be other laws that you can't find directly something like that. And the conversation has to happen with Muslims arguing over what is the meaning of maqasid. And the idea of dignity, as you said, is a kind of a new one of the maqasid. It's actually not a classical one. So you have to agree that the preservation of dignity is a maqasid. And as Islamic jurisprudence is, we disagree. We have lots of different interpretations. So to make that law, you have to get everyone to agree on a particular interpretation of maqasid from usul al-fiqh to agree to make that law. And you may all agree in Indonesia, but there may be other places in the world where they don't all agree on these new ideas of interpretation of maqasid. Maybe you want to make a human rights treaty. Maybe you want to make a climate change. You have to find the maqasid to support that. I think that's a bad idea, and it is not what they did in the past. In the past, the basis of sultan and kings and caliphs making law was not interpreting maqasid as the basis of their lawmaking. They just made a decision based on what they thought was going to serve the public good. The maqasid came later when a scholar, a faqih, comes to them and says, actually, that violates this maqasid. But they're not in the process of coming up with the law to begin with. That's not the role of the ulama. The mihna, where they fought to keep the state out of interpreting Quran, was a very important moment in Muslim history. And what I'm worried about happening is when we start to mix maqasid analysis with state lawmaking, you are combining church and state, or mosque and state, or fuqaha and state, in a way that we never did in our own past. We are copying a European mistake, I think, where you are having scholars of fiqh, Quranic scholars, have a role at this lawmaking level, the state lawmaking level. That is actually a combination of church and state. And that is not what we did. So we are now in a situation where we have a danger of theocracy. Like I said, I like your laws here, great. But other places, they may make bad decisions, and the population can't stop it because the people making laws are saying, no, we know Islam better than you. We are the ones making law based on our interpretation of fiqh. I think that's very dangerous. The last thing I want to say is about, you said, we don't have a lot of Jafaris here, not a big deal. We're mostly Shafi here. Okay, that's true. But this system with this diversity of fiqh also allows, even within the Shafi school, new interpretations, new ijtihad. So it's not just the established Shafi rules, but also some new reform ideas. You have lots of really interesting ijtihad community scholarship going on here. If this community understood clearly, I can choose which one I want to follow, they actually, I think, would encourage better education in the population about this. And even if you have a few Jafaris, even if you have a few Hanafis, it might be nice to let them choose to follow their rule. And maybe there's some ideas in these other schools that are going to help the Shafi school also evolve and come up with new ideas. So there's history of this too. The Ottomans liked the Hanafi school, so they appointed lots of qadis that were Hanafis everywhere. But very often, a population would say, we don't really want a Hanafi qadi in our city. We are a lot of Shafis or a lot of Malikis. You really need to bring us a Maliki qadi. They're a minority population, but it's a public good service to give them a qadi that can serve them. And I think that actually is something we should encourage in our Muslim communities, to have that diversity that is respected. The more we pretend that we don't have this diversity, I think we're dangerously moving into a way where we can't recognize that diversity of fiqh interpretation is actually part of our history. We forget that this diversity is part of our history, and we think it's unusual. And actually, it's unusual what we're doing now. What historically happened was we had lots of different interpretations that were equally valid. And honestly, right now, I think the world could benefit from Muslims teaching everybody how to do diversity with respect. We have a history where we can have unity without uniformity. You understand what I'm saying? We can be one ummah and still not all live exactly the same way. We are not threatened by that kind of difference. We never have been. But now our societies, we all live in our own little social media bubble, and we only read the news from people who think like I do. And in the United States, we have Republicans don't talk to Democrats because they think they're evil. And this is bad for society, that you think everyone has to be like you in order to be respected. No, Muslim history taught the world how to do diversity well. And I think the more we forget that, the more we are losing our own guidance for the global ummah. And so that's why I say, even if you don't have a lot of Jafaris, just pay attention. Maybe you might want some diversity of schools that people can have some access to, even if they're not a majority. All right. I know that there's very little time left, and I would love to hear some comments from the audience or students or whatever. Go ahead. Are you going to control? Yeah, you're
Yes,
moderating.
okay. Be patient. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor, for your additional sharing, and which clarify about how to create and developing the constitutional framework. And I would like to thank you also to Dr. Yusup Hidayat that has been present to us about several key points that I have, not about the categories of law in Islam, and then the pattern of the relationship between the state and Sharia, and as well that the comment from Dr. Yusup that what Professor Quraishi-Landes has been presented is very logical about the goodness for the community and is considered to according with Sharia. So we move on to the next session, which is a Q&A session. I believe this will be more warmer than usual. And so I notice in here there are about 60 to 70 audiences. Please be patient. Okay, I will give the opportunity. Ada 60-70 orang di sini, and then if I try to see in the online 45, I don't know whether it is double present in online and offline, or perhaps single present in online. Okay. Nevertheless, let me facilitate this interactive Q&A session. The first term I will give opportunity who present offline in this room, the first 3 participants, and the second term I will give opportunity who as in the online Zooms. Please be patient, Mr. Indra Utama in online, and the last terms I will move if we still have time. We are going to go to proceed to the third term. So still have 45 minutes, Professor and also Doctor. And the first one I would like to invite from this room 3 first participants. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, more than 3. Okay, all right. I will accommodate all. Okay, the first one I will give a chance to. Okay, from the front side. Please mention your name and organization, and to who your question is intended. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. My name is
Boleh
Ayu.
pakai bahasa Indonesia juga.
Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Ayu from Indonesia, Jentera School of Law, and it's really interesting to listen to your presentation because it's really comprehensive and even easy to understand. Even for me, because I have I'm still unfamiliar with Islamic government and constitutionalism, so it's really interesting, and I can wait to for the book to be published. And I'm gonna ask 2 questions. First to the Professor Asifa. I see that the core principle in it is respect, and I think that because I haven't read the book, so I think it's really important to also elaborate and dig in more. How can we ensure and guarantee the respect aspect? Because even in Indonesia, even though of course the majority of Muslim people in Indonesia have like as Dr. Yusup said that we have like similar understanding or interpretation, but then even with this maybe not too diverse community, we still have disagreements, and yeah, it can break and divide people. So I think it's really important for you in your book to elaborate more about that, because I think that's like the core principle to make these three pillars doable, even though these are great, and I think it's relevant to the current situation where many Islamic Muslims, they don't even understand that it's okay to have like diverse interpretation or perspective on their beliefs, and even more, I think it's really important to when you mentioning about the reward system. I think more people needs to understand about that concept, because we think that, oh no, we are right and you are wrong, totally wrong, and you might go to hell. So and my question is, you mentioned about when you differentiate between these two, there's state law and then there's the makasid. What I'm thinking is, because in Indonesia not all are Muslims, so we have, maybe is it possible like the opt out of the law state is not only in terms of Islamic understandings, but also maybe in terms of religions and even culture. And my second question to Dr. Yusup is, when Professor Asifa mentioned about makasid, so is it, do you think that we already have that, because we have Majelis Ulama Indonesia or Indonesian Ulama Council? Do you think like we already have the modality or even the agency to apply the concept of that Professor Asifa proposed? But once again, it's really interesting and I'm so happy to be here. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next participant. Okay. Okay, Prof. Please mention your name and organization.
Check. All right. Thank you. My name is Ramdan. I'm from book community. Ramdan. Okay. Okay. Thank you for Dr. Quraish. Your presentation is really interesting, and I look forward for your book. Okay. And yeah, maybe your books will answer my confusing, because started 7 October. Many people or my friends asked me to, because they see what's happening in Gaza, and many of my friends asked me to join his community to study about Khilafah. And I know it's wrong, because I study by Europe, the dark age when religion used by government. And my question is, because you mentioned about the fiqh and the siyasa, what's the meeting point where we put the fiqh in the democracy system? What's the meeting point, and is there any border for in democracy system? Border, yes, border. And the second question is, you said that fiqh is not really used in democracy system, and really needed, not really needed in democracy system in the future. So it means it's like secularism or something else, because I understand that something that I catch from your presentation, that we have to put the fiqh and the other side, means the fiqh is for personal thing. Okay. And the third question, saya tunjukkan ke, well, yes. Sebenarnya Pak, di Indonesia ada pemikiran yang memang seperti itu, seperti Bapak tadi, ada Gus Dur, ada Nurholis Majid, tapi ketika itu dikemukakan, dikemukakan, maka orang bilang ini sekuler dan jangan diikuti. Bagaimana pandangan Bapak? Thank you.
Third participant, Mbak Nisa.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Arab sadri bayasiri amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Okay. Thank you. My name is Dr. Aris Mahmud. From the I am a lecturer in Azhar University. I want to ask you about the about each country have a different legal system. So like in America, in Indonesia, but the community, Muslim community in Indonesia and in America, so many. How to the America country to respond the temporary, not contemporary, like the like issue the which I mean I can say in Indonesia. Okay, thank you. Lebih jelasnya begini, jadi pada dasarnya setiap negara itu memiliki sistem hukum yang berbeda. Begitu pula keadaan di Amerika dalam hal istilahnya kaitan antara religion and the country, hubungan antara negara dan agama tersebut. Amerika termasuk negara sekuler, secularly country. Berkaitan dengan kasus-kasus kontroversi dalam hal ini adalah yang berkaitan dengan hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan praktek-praktek keislaman yang dalam hal ini menjadi fenomena negara juga. Salah satunya adalah pernikahan dini yang memang di negara-negara seperti Indonesia dan Nigeria itu adalah sebagai salah satu negara penyumbang pernikahan dini terbesar di dunia. Nah, pada dasarnya pernikahan dini tersebut adalah adanya border atau keterbatasan dari regulasi dalam pengaturan tersebut. Nah, bagaimana Amerika dalam hal ini dalam mensikapi bahwa fenomena the civil marriage is a crucial thing, a crucial issue. If we related to MDGs Millennium Development Goal is to decrease the atau menurunkan tingkat dari pernikahan dini tersebut yang akan berdampak kepada hilangnya potensi-potensi dari generasi muda tersebut. Nah, bagaimana sistem hukum di Amerika tersebut untuk mensikapi tersebut, walaupun memang bukan negara Muslim, tapi pada dasarnya penduduk Muslim di Amerika pun begitu banyak dan bagaimana mensikapinya. Demikian. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
My question is quite simple. I would like to know your opinion on how diverse should we limit on how diverse will it be when we consider the terms of diversity in your opinion. How diverse, how far is the diversity that we should consider? Because, for example, you mentioned about a lot of fiqh, Hanafi and so forth, but then we understand that we have Shia, Sunni, and then in Indonesia we have also Ahmadiyah, right? And some might not think Ahmadiyah as part of the Muslim community, but in your understanding, should we filter it out only to filter the diversity of the freedom, or we just make it freely, acknowledging that it might contradict each other harshly, not just minimum, but harshly. Foundation principle.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Nisa. The last participant, perhaps Shakira. before we move on.
Halo, selamat pagi semuanya. Perkenalkan, saya Syakira Rimadita. Saya adalah mahasiswi dari Sekolah Tinggi Hukum Indonesia Jentera, yang mana dalam kesempatan kali ini saya ingin menanggapi pilar pertama yang disampaikan oleh Profesor Asifa, yaitu state law must be based on the public good, dan yang ingin saya soroti mengunderline public good itu sendiri, karena public good ini yang menurut saya itu tidak secara eksplisit menjelaskan bahwa public good yang seperti apa, karena terutama di negara kita yang banyak ini, yang sangat luas ini, otomatis public good itu public good itu sangat beragam gitu Bang opsinya, sehingga public good ini akan kemudian melahirkan permasalahan juga gitu. Dan opsi pertama ini yang saya rasa tidak sekaligus menyelesaikan masalah gitu, dan ini yang ingin saya kritisi gitu, public good yang seperti apa, karena apakah public good yang dimaksud adalah public good atas mayoritas suara gitu, yang dimana didominasi oleh misalnya penduduk Islam, atau enggak suara yang dianggap benar oleh moral mayoritas warga Indonesia itu sendiri. Kemudian saya ingin merujuk pada satu contoh, yaitu terhadap SEMA nomor 2 tahun 2023 tentang anjuran para hakim untuk mengabulkan permohonan pernikahan beda agama. Dan ini menjadi isu yang krusial karena pernikahan beda agama itu bisa mendapatkan penafsiran yang berbeda-beda dari mazhab agama itu sendiri. Ada mazhab agama dalam Islam khususnya yang menyatakan bahwa pernikahan beda agama itu boleh-boleh saja, asalkan misalnya yang pria yang beragama Islam dan yang perempuan itu beragama non-muslim, sehingga doktrin seperti ini yang kemudian dijadikan solusi namun menimbulkan permasalahan juga. Namun bisa dinyatakan SEMA ini lahir akibat dari suara mayoritas yang bisa dikatakan sebagai public good, sehingga kemudian apabila pilar kedua yang dinyatakan oleh Profesor Asifa bahwa individu sebetulnya bisa memilih mana pemikiran atau aliran yang dianggap benar gitu oleh dirinya. Namun hal ini juga menjadi masalah karena akibat dari SEMA ini, ketika seorang manusia memutuskan yang berbeda daripada pandangan mayoritas, ini menimbulkan individu tersebut tidak bisa diterima oleh mayoritas itu sendiri. Ini terjadi karena akibat dari penolakan permohonan pernikahan beda agama ini berdampak pada ia tidak bisa mendaftarkan pernikahannya di Dukcapil, sehingga hal ini kan menggerus daripada hak warga negara yang akhirnya masuk pada siasah itu sendiri atau hukum tata negara, dan dampak dari penafsiran yang seperti ini sebetulnya menurut saya akan berdampak serius gitu, terutama terhadap hak asasi manusia itu sendiri. Kemudian sebagaimana yang disampaikan oleh Fleming, sebetulnya pilar-pilar ini saya sepakat juga karena dibenarkan dalam aliran pemikiran hukum yaitu critical legal study. Namun pemikiran critical legal study ini kemudian juga dibantah oleh Mary Fleming karena pada akhirnya suara minoritas ketika ia menyatakan bahwa ingin keluar daripada apa yang dianggap benar oleh mayoritas, moral mayoritas, dia kemudian tetap saja tidak akan bisa membuat suaranya terdengar, kurang lebih seperti itu. Sehingga saya sedikit juga membenarkan pandangan dari Carol Smart yang menyatakan bahwa apakah sebaiknya doktrin ini hanya seharusnya dianggap sebagai pengetahuan saja, bukan sebagai penyelesaian solusi. Dan yang ingin saya tanyakan kepada baik Profesor Asifa ataupun Pak Yusup Hidayat, mohon maaf, atau Pak Yusup Hidayat, ini bagaimana menanggapi pemikiran dari Carol Smart itu sendiri yang menyatakan bahwa sebaiknya sebaiknya doktrin-doktrin seperti ini hanya dianggap sebagai sebatas ilmu pengetahuan saja. Terlebih dari tadi Pak Yusup Hidayat juga menekankan bahwasanya negara ini betul dinyatakan oleh Founding Father bukan sebagai negara berbasis agama. Kurang lebih seperti itu. Terima kasih.
In any way that there's a question that has been unanswered, I will perhaps provide you and also Pak Yusup. So want to be first? Okay, Pak Yusup.
Saya mau komentari yang perlu saya komentari aja ya. Jadi yang terkait dengan pertanyaan-pertanyaan tadi ke saya ya. Tadi Ayu ya, she asked both Majlis Ulama and also is Maqasid Syariah implemented in Indonesia or not. I think Maqasid Syariah is, if we see here, reviewed the state act, for example, the state constitution. Yeah, if we know about concept of Maqasid Syariah, memang ini ada banyak perbedaan pandangan ya tentang Maqasid Syariah. Kalau beliau itu kan, kalau saya pahami ya, merevisi kebijakan negara ya, to revisit, to review the state law, for example. Kalau kita dalami contohnya, if we deeply think about Majlis Ulama statement ya, atau Majlis Ulama School of Law ya, aliran hukumnya gitu kan, itu memang lebih kepada penyelesaian masalah ya. Jadi ada perbedaan mendasar metodologi dalam mengeluarkan fatwa Majelis Ulama, baik terkait ekonomi ataupun terkait dengan pandangan-pandangan tadi kan, pandangan-pandangan keagamaan yang lain, baik itu zakat atau persoalan daging babi macam-macam, terus mengenai dengan virus macam-macam ya. Jadi ada konsepnya, as Dr. Asifa said about sadud dariyah, for example ya. This is some method, sadud dariyah some method. Itu metodenya digunakan itu adalah bagaimana menghindari kerusakan-kerusakan. Ini bagian dari Maqasid Syariah sebenarnya. Contohnya apa? Dalam aspek makanan contohnya, ya. Itu metodenya adalah metode sadud dariyah tadi, menghindari kerusakan. Jadi kalau itu selama itu tidak ada kerusakan, nah, itu akan dibolehkan kan gitu. Tapi kalau itu menghadirkan pada kerusakan, itu dibolehkan. Itu metode yang dominan ya. Yang dominan yang digunakan. This is the dominant method that used in Majlis Ulama Indonesia ya. Tetapi kalau di dalam masalah ekonomi contohnya, metode yang digunakan adalah solusi terhadap persoalan. Jadi bukan hanya halal haram saja sebenarnya, tapi bagaimana keluar dari persoalan. Karena apa? Tingkat perkembangan ekonomi kan tinggi gitu kan. Nah, sehingga yang diselesaikan ini gimana nih menyelesaikannya gitu. Jadi nggak pada proses, bahkan itu keluar kepada madhab-madhab klasik dulu. Jadi fikih-fikih klasik itu kadang-kadang argumen-argumen yang lemah pada masa dulu sekarang itu digunakan walaupun itu lemah. Contoh, emas dulu itu jadi alat tukar ya, sehingga itu bukan komoditas contohnya kan gitu kan ya. Maka nggak boleh itu kalau seandainya di online tuh kemudian tuh menjual belikan itu kan, karena dia alat tukar kan gitu. Nah sekarang dibolehkan karena apa? Emas bagian dari komoditas, maka ada Tokopedia macam-macam. Jadi memang kalau saya lihat memang ini paling moderat. Mungkin kawan-kawan kenal Salafi tentang atau yang lain ya, dia punya madhab sendiri ya, punya madhab sendiri, tapi itu tidak dominan ya. Tapi kalau di MUI biasanya ada Muhammadiyah, ada NU, ada Persis macam-macam, itu sampai 50 ormas, dan this organization is very moderate, dan itu lebih kepada solusi, dan ini berbasis pada konsep Maqasid Syariah ya. Juga mensikapi contohnya COVID kemarin, itu luar biasa gitu kan, itu tidak mudah itu. Nah, contoh tentang Palestina kemarin ya, itu bagaimana nih penyelesaiannya. Makanya kan tidak melis tuh daftarnya nama perusahaannya, tetapi punya prinsip how to solve this problem kan, bagaimana menyelesaikan pasal ini. Jadi kalau ditanya, memang sebaiknya teman-teman kalau ada pendapat yang sifatnya umum, lihat dulu fatwa MUI, itu lebih selamat lah kalau menurut saya ya. Rekomendasi saya ya, rekomendasi saya, baik dalam aspek keagamaan, aspek ekonomi ataupun politik kan gitu. Karena walaupun memang terjadi perbedaan di dalam juga, tetapi ketika itu sudah satu suara, sudah kita gunakan kan gitu. Jadi itu ya, terkait dengan pertanyaan Ayu tadi. Terus kemudian yang terakhir tadi terkait dengan masalah ya ini memang dilematis ya. Ini saya kira Indonesia memang perlu kepastian hukum ya. Pertanyaan gitu kan, Dan juga memang perlu mengapresiasi perbedaan pendapat gitu kan. Tapi kalau ketika itu kepastian hukum itu terkorbankan ya, sehingga masyarakat menjadi bimbang kan gitu kan. Tapi saya kira interpretasi nih ya, interpretasi terkait dengan masalah sama mungkin nanti terkait dengan pernikahan beda agama ya. Ini saya kira ini sangat populer sekali sebenarnya kan. Karena di dalam Al-Quran sendiri boleh menikah antara orang muslim pria dengan orang muslim perempuan kan gitu kan. Ya, cuma persoalannya memang konteksnya berbeda-beda antara satu dengan yang lain ya. Terus kemudian ketika itu ke pengadilan, itu menimbulkan berbagai persoalan kan gitu kan. Nah, jadi memang kalau dikatakan tadi itu sebagai sebuah, ini saya belum bisa melihat apakah bagaimana implementasinya. Ya, implementasinya memang ya itu perlu ini ya, perlu memang diskusi yang lebih dalam terkait dengan itu. Tetapi mungkin hakim ya, nggak tahu nih, hakim perlu kesamaan persepsi mungkin tentang kasus tersebut kan gitu kan. Ya, walaupun mungkin masih juga ada yang punya perbedaan pendapat tentang hal itu. Saya kira wajar saja ya. Kalau ada yang berpandangan bahwa ya itu dibolehkan saja, memang interpretasi dia ya sama kayak berjilbaban. Kalau Syihab kan berpandangan memang tidak wajib kata dia kan gitu kan. Tapi yang lain berpandangan itu wajib kan. Nah, cuman ketika itu bicara hukum negara, kalau itu kan privat ya. Masalahnya kalau jilbab itu sangat privat sekali sehingga itu kan tidak ada hukum negara. Kayak sama zakat tuh. Zakat itu di Indonesia belum bisa diwajibkan muzaki itu kan. Karena tidak bisa intervensi. Ini kan kelemahan kita. Negara yang memang saya katakan ini bukan berbasis bukan agama sekuler dan tetapi menghubungkan antara keduanya. Tetapi hal-hal yang sifatnya ubudiyah itu negara nggak bisa ikut campur. Maka ketika zakat nggak bisa menghukum muzaki itu, yang bisa dihukum adalah lembaga zakatnya saja. Saya kira mungkin itu. Yes. Of course, Indonesia, if we use Maqasid Syariah as reviewed the constitution or also the Act of Indonesia, I think Maqasid Syariah is implemented in Indonesia. For example, about human right and also about, for example, public good. But this is many interpretation about a public good. I think it is.
Doctor, please, Professor.
There it is. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Maqasid does play a role here very much, but it's not in the role that in my proposal. So I would change the role that Maqasid plays if Indonesia were to follow my model. Like I said, it wouldn't be part of the lawmaking process or the thinking through the lawmaking process. I do think that the role of Majlis Ulama being a separate entity than the state is actually very much within the realm of what I was talking about, where the fiqh and siyasa are separate entities, they're private scholars, the state isn't controlling their ijtihad thinking. I think that's very good. I need to study more about exactly how it works, but it feels to me like it's more unitary and not diverse. And that would be different from the classical model and the way I would like to see diverse interpretations in the realm of fiqh, not one singular answer coming as a fatwa to the government from MUA. I would like to see more diversity. And the state, that doesn't mean certainty doesn't have to be for banking or something like that, because in my model, the state still can make one law. If it's important for the state to have a singular banking regulation or something, they still can and should do that. But in my model, it would not be based on a fatwa. It would be based on just studying what is in the public good. So this gets to some of the questions that you guys asked. I'll try to organize them here a little bit. One thing, I really don't like to use the word secular and religious, because in my opinion, that brings a lot of baggage of European meanings of what secular and religious is. So I think it was you who asked the question, is fiqh more personal, not the other topics? That is also a leftover from colonial era. The way that colonial powers allowed for fiqh sharia to still exist in colonized countries was to narrow it down to what they call personal status issues. So they made it just personal topics. And that is a continuation today in many Muslim countries, where the only fiqh that's applied by the courts is just on those personal issues. That's very common today, but it's a leftover of like, it was the part that the colonials are like, here, you can have this, and we're going to control all the other stuff. We're going to control the money, we're going to control the military. So for fiqh itself covers all lots of things that are beyond personal. There's contract law, generally, there's property law, there's lots of criminal, there's lots of things that are not just personal status. So this gets to what is the range of the fiqh diversity that I would imagine in a society following my model? And so several of you asked questions like that, like, how much fiqh diversity are we really talking about? Like, aren't there some crazy interpretations out there? Do we really want to let people opt out to some weird thing that's going to be, you know, way out there? And this gets to the point of, can non-Muslims also opt into their religious law? So what if, God forbid, there was a law that allowed child sacrifice and killing of children as part of their religion? And so would we allow that just because the system allows for opt-out? Historically, yes, non-Muslims opted out to their own religious law, and that, like I said, I think that was a strength of Muslim societies, that we could rule over lands that were not majority Muslim with not a lot of hostility. Hindus in India lived under Mughal rule Muslims never became a majority in India, and yet they still ruled quite nicely over large populations of diverse. So that happens because non-Muslim law also was an opt-out. Which brings the question, how far do we take this? Do we really let, you know, some religion that allows child sacrifice? That gets back to the role of siyasa, or the state law that I was talking about. So the state still has the authority to choose not to enforce certain things why? They don't serve the public good. So if we think it is bad for society to kill children, then we would say it's not in the public good for the state to enforce those fiqh opt-outs. So you can believe you want to do that, but the state is not going to help you do that. Not because we disagree with your religion, you know, lakum dinakum waliya din. But as a state matter serving the public good, we're not going to do that, right? So it always comes back to what is in the public good as to how far fiqh diversity will be allowed. And so this gets to the question of interracial marriage or child marriage or all kinds of other things. You know, what about restricting Ahmadiyya practices in the country? These are all not questions of what does Islam say on these things. The question to ask is, what is in the public good on this topic? I'll give you a different example. In the United States, we have a big controversy about abortion right now. There is a diversity of fiqh opinion on whether or not and when you could have an abortion. It turns out that the schools disagree over when it is after the soul is breathed into the fetus. So the majority opinion is 120 days after conception. There's also 80 days, 40 days, and 0 days. So as a Muslim, I can choose which one I follow, okay? The state shouldn't be making that choice for me. The state should be making a decision based on if abortions cause harm in society, not because they chose which school to follow, but cause harm in society. In fact, there is evidence in the United States that bans on abortion actually cause more harm than allowing abortions, but providing prenatal care, health care, child care, better financial support. So many women are, you know, dangerously undergoing abortions because it's banned, which actually is causing more harm and more death, maternal mortality and fetal mortality with a ban. That's not to say whether or not I would have an abortion if I was a Muslim, if I got pregnant. The question is not a one-to, so let me say it this way. The relationship between fiqh and siyasa is not a one-to-one correlation of if something is prohibited by fiqh, therefore the state should also prohibit it. That is not the case. So just think about it for a second. If it is wajib to pray 5 times a day. Yeah, okay, it's wajib to pray 5 times. That's the fiqh says that universally across all the schools. Does that mean that the state should be punishing people who do not pray 5 times a day? It's not exactly the same role. The state should be making laws that serve the public good. If it serves the public good to punish people who are not praying 5 times, fine. But I think you might make an argument that's actually not a good idea, right? It might actually cause people to resent the state, not want to be Muslim anymore. It might actually cause more harm. So you have to always ask the question, not what does Islam say I do, The question is, what should the state do that serves everybody here? And that goes to interreligious marriage, abortion, child marriage, all of these questions. It's not a question of what does the fiqh say. The fiqh is asking you as an individual, what should you do? The siyasa always has to ask the bigger question. So we had in the United States for a while a prohibition on alcohol. It was in the Constitution. It was banned. Believe it or not, in the United States, there was a time where alcohol was banned. Did it, in the early 1900s. Did it stop people from drinking? No. They just snuck it under the table and they still drank. So if the goal is really to stop people drinking, what is the best way to do that? A ban probably isn't the best way to do that. Maybe something else. Maybe making it difficult to buy, very expensive, maybe something else. If you really want to stop people from having abortions, maybe a ban isn't the best way to do it. Maybe better childcare, etc. Okay, so that's the question of how much fiqh diversity is allowed always goes back to the same question in my model is what is the role of the state law, and that is serving the public good. And I think different societies will answer that question differently. So it may be that interreligious marriage, it is better to ban it in some places and not in others. That is not the same question as whether your mufti would tell you you can get married or not. That's a different question. The question of what the state should do has nothing to do with what you as an individual should do. It has to do with what is the state going to use the state power of punishment and fines and putting people in prison. What are the things we want the state to do that? How much energy do we want the state to be spending on that as opposed to other things that might be better for the state to do? That is a very different question than, should you marry this person? No, you go to your mufti. That's the answer to that. Okay. How do we decide the public good? How much can it solve the problems? And I wish I could have heard all of your question because it sounded fascinating and I couldn't understand most of it. And I got very short translations. So now I have to learn Bahasa because it's all very interesting. But I think in general, just to be brief, Maslahat Amma is not utilitarianism. It's not economic numbers. It's not a cold calculation. It does include the idea of morality. It does include the idea of good, building a good moral society, good people, that kind of thing. So the kinds of things that you would decide that are in the public good, I think is accessible to a lot of people. But it doesn't necessarily mean it will solve all the problems. But that's not a new problem for my model. That's a problem for any democratic system. Can the state solve everybody's problems of making state laws? No. The way that you build good societies is, again, a combination of the non-state role of your religious communities, your manners, your cultural norms, the way people just be with each other in a society, in addition to the state enforcing law. That's how you build a society. The state cannot control every single behavior of every single person. A lot of that is just manners. Just culture, what your parents taught you. They have to work together. We can't expect the state to do everything. So again, focus on the things that is important for the state to spend that energy of the financial power and the military power that the state has on the things that are the best suited for the state to do. Building roads, making sure that cars are safe and the buildings are safe and we're not building nuclear weapons and we are maybe joining the UN to try to stop the United States from vetoing every Security Council resolution to help the Palestinians. Like, these are things states can do, right? These are important uses of state power. And then you work together to make a combination of it for the society to function. Indra has a question. Can we fit her in? Yes? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Prof and Doctor. So we move on to the second terms. There's Indra Utamanasution and as well Anissa. So I would like to provide a first opportunity to Indra Utamanasution. Please be concise and please mention your organization. Thank you.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay, thank you. So my name is Indra and I'm a student of Universitas Azhar. First of all, I would like to say thank you and much appreciation for your sharing your thought. It was so good to learn from me, for myself. And second thing, I think I have two questions. Not for being discriminative, but I'm not going to ask or directly question for Pak Yusup because he's my teacher, so I can ask him in his class. So my question will goes to Professor Asifa. My first question is regarding the pillars, and I learned also that you mentioned many things about democracy and how Islam implemented here in Indonesia. And I think we all agree that Indonesia is a set of example where democracy and Islam can live together. So my question is whether will you consider to add democracy as one of the pillar for what you so called constitutionalism? That's the first question. The second question is about we are living today in the world where a branding, where a labeling is it's a significant issue, and unfortunately there is the huge and a massive campaign of Islamophobic campaign and bad labeling for everything about Islam and about Muslim. So by having said that, I think what is your opinion about if we pursue something that we called about something like Sharia law or something about Islamic law, and the implementation and everything with that with those label, which one is more important? Because we will we will have so many pushback when we're saying that in public, instead of like I'm quoting Professor Yusup that in Indonesia we are practically have implemented many of fundamentals principle of Islam in our constitution and also in many laws here in Indonesia. So I think what was your best advice for whether we campaigning about this in Islamic or Sharia law, or we can put aside the label and advocate about the implementation in the constitution or the any regulating law here in Indonesia or in other Muslim population country. Thank you.
Thank you, Indra. I will move on to Anissa. Please, Anissa. It's still mute, Anissa. Please open your mic. Okay.
Yeah, I cannot unmute myself because the host do not allow it. So I was waiting for the host. Okay, can you hear my voice now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to ask the distinguished presenters, as I am coming from Universitas Sumatera Utara, Faculty of Law. I am actually a lecturer and happen to be as well a doctoral student. So yeah, as you may can predict, I would very like to use this opportunity to talk and gain insight from both presenters about my dissertation paper, because I am planning to write about legal transplant between Indonesia and Islamic law, specifically in using of phonology and qiyas, because I started this research many years ago. I started in my undergraduate student skripsi. Yeah, I was comparing the principle of legality between Islamic and Indonesian, and then I just found out that the main significant difference thing is the utilization of phonology. Like in Indonesia, we prohibited it, but we prohibit the utilization of phonology for the sake of legal certainty, because the old story between Indonesia, Netherlands, France, and then Rome, and then canonic law perhaps as well, and then in Islamic law, turns out analogy is somehow stands as a source of Islamic law. It plays a significant, a core role in finding. Okay. And then I continue the research in my graduate paper, S2, my thesis. It's comparing more specific about the analogy, and I found out that analogy, qiyas perhaps, might as well become a solution that have a significant potential to adopt in Indonesia, because it is so adaptive and responsible and fast to be applied in Indonesian criminal justice system. Like, I know that ijtihad and qiyas and another interpretative method is currently applies in MUI, Majelis Ulama Indonesia, but we also happen to know that MUI somehow cannot force the fatwa, the decision towards whole Indonesian society, because MUI has a limited jurisdiction, and it only for niche society, Islamic person only, and even when it specifically for Islamic society, there is somehow a chance that Islamic society itself neglect the fatwa that MUI has provided. So I would very like to know your insights about the potential of doing the legal transplant on analogy in Indonesia, and perhaps the challenges, because when we come back to Makosid, I don't know, I am coming late. I just finished another urgent test, so I am sorry if it's not relevant, or if I take the Makosid Syariah as the wrong understanding. But I mean, the limited understanding that I know is the purpose of Islamic law is to protect humanity, like menjadikan manusia sebagai manusia, gitu, memanusiakan manusia, protecting their belonging, protecting their self, protecting their I don't know, I forget. I only remember there is 5 things that Islamic law wants to protect. The purpose that Islamic law want to be gained, and to compare it with the new criminal law purpose in this modern era is actually to protect society from the criminal act itself. So it's also already bergeser, already shifting, not be criminal law, not only supposed to protect individual from the abuse of power from the governance, but nowadays it's more commonly to protect the society from the criminal activities, because the development of technology and etc. So perhaps that's it. I actually only want to hear any discussion, and perhaps I can put it your insight or your answer to my dissertation as to make my dissertation paper later become more interesting to others. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. So, who would like to proceed first? Prof. Asifa? We still have 10 minutes to answer, and then we proceed to finish.
Okay. It's a long time for you to sit. Thank you all very much. That's a long time. How long are your classes? Are they this long? Are you used to this long? Wow. Okay. It's a long time to sit. Thank you. I appreciate that. Happy to advise on your PhD thesis. I'm very interested in what you're working on, Anissa, so we can share my contact information, and I'm happy for you to send it to me, or if you'd like to read some parts of my book, if you'd like to look I'm happy to do that. Lots of different questions here. Why isn't democracy one of my pillars? Because my pillars are drawn from historical established Islamic principles. That's it. I want my proposal to be unassailable by somebody who says, you're making this up, right? I'm not making this up. I'm looking at history and I'm pulling out the ideas that I see in history. For better or for worse, democracy historically was not how Muslim societies made their laws. I think there's an easy way to bring it in that is very consistent, because the general principle is serving the public good. So there's lots of ways to figure out the public good. You could leave it to the king and just hope you have a good, nice king, and great, but maybe you have a bad king, and maybe the rest of us don't like that risk, and so we want democracy. So that's why democracy worked well with my proposal, but it's not necessary. But what's necessary is the idea of serving the public good as a basis for state lawmaking. And I'm not making that up. That comes from history. And so I don't want to have to defend, that I came up with some new idea. That part is historical. And I mean, to connected to that is with all due respect to Indra, I don't think this is all just labels. I do think this is very structural change that I'm talking about. I'm not just trying to rename things or reconsider things. And I really am thinking about, we need to change the way we understand authority and power and law in our societies. And like I said in the beginning, I think that we are very much influenced. I'm coming from the West myself. I mean, we're very much influenced by thinking about things in a European nation state idea that I actually think is dangerous. And it is losing some very, very important things of our own Islamic history that I think we shouldn't lose. And that goes to your point that I forgot to answer you, I forgot your name in the beginning, about respect. I actually think that if we were to recapture some of what I'm talking about from our history, it teaches us how to do respect to our differences better than what we are doing today. The European nation state model is built on an idea that all the law is the same. Nation state is, the idea is, look, think about a nation in the sense of not government, but nation like a community of people who are mostly ethnically the same, linguistically the same, religiously the same, they speak the same language. That's what the classical meaning of nation is. So a nation state is a state that makes laws for that very homogeneous population. So the laws are all the same for everybody. That is not Muslim societies from the beginning. We had Jewish communities living in Medina. Like, this is not our history. So we don't presume everyone is the same from the beginning. And in fact, the way our ijtihad works is it builds in that diversity into the constitutional structure. So if we were to recapture this, I think we would remember and revive some of the tools of having respect across our differences. And another thing that I notice is the more educated you become in usul al-fiqh, in Sharia, the more respectful you are to other people's differences. Where I see the intolerance is where people are not educated about Islam. The more you get educated, the more you realize how respectful the highest scholars, Abu Hanifa, Malik himself, Shafi himself, they were so respectful to each other across these differences. So the problem is in the lack of education. The problem is not in Islam. The problem is the lack of education about our own history. So that goes to so I don't think it's a label. I actually think it's structurally changing the way we think about this stuff. Yeah, I mean, so Anissa's project is interesting, and I'd love to know more. She's interested in how analogy works, and I think this goes to, I need to learn more about how the system works here, because from what I can tell so far is that the Masjid al-Ulama uses lots of different tools, maybe some qiyas, maybe not, and they give fatwas, and then they're, not enforced on everybody, but they're internalized by various entities of the government, but only applicable to Muslims. But like she said, you can't enforce it on everybody. So there's some good and some bad in that, in my opinion. I think it's good that you can't enforce a fatwa from one interpretation on everybody, because it goes to the diversity problem again. Like, I actually think people should be able to choose which one to follow that they want to follow. I do think it's useful to have scholarship advising the state in, making sure you're safe within the realm of what is shari'i. But the use of analogy and the fact that Anissa's saying it's a new idea that she wants to bring back the use of analogy, and it sounds like from what you were saying, Doctor, that the focus on maqasid in the lawmaking sort of realm here is that it seems like some of the particular tools of ijtihad that made the different fiqh schools are kind of like in the background, and there's more of an emphasis on more abstract value sort of analysis, which I think is great when you're thinking about reviewing state action. But when we come down to the particular fiqh rules, I actually think analogy does a lot of good at individual rulemaking for individual Muslims. it's not all that useful at the state level, but at individual fiqh level, I think it's very useful. So the fact that, Anissa, you're working on bringing it back and trying to encourage it, it's very interesting to me because I was like, what do you mean bring it back? It's always been there. It's built into how fiqh operates. So I'm very interested in learning more about how Indonesia and other countries operate with some of the pieces of the puzzle that I'm talking about and not others. Because what I think is so interesting is that every society has evolved since independence in their own unique ways to wrestle with the problems of society. And so very often the classical fiqh rules don't work well for the needs of international demands, global human rights and things like that. So everybody comes up with a new way to solve that problem. And I just think I have another way. And I would like to engage with all of the, thinking in these countries to propose a new approach to thinking about this that can be folded into your own evolution that is going to be very unique to your country. So I don't want to interrupt the adhan here. So, I have other things. I'm happy to talk with you, Anissa, more about your project, especially the criminal law stuff. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Professor. So we have to wait for the azan first. Okay, shall we continue? Yusup, please.
Thank you, Dr. Asifa. It's very to answer the question. I think Dr. Asifa has a good concept about public good, but we must learn more from her. Untuk tadi ya pertanyaan tentang pemikiran Gus Dur dan Cak Nur ya, Ramdan ya, saya belum jawab tadi. Ini memang sebenarnya interpretasi ya, interpretasi terhadap pemikiran. Kadang-kadang begini, pemikiran Ibnu Taimiyah dulu itu bagi sang sekarang dianggap itu bagi sekarang kan karena wah ini terlalu saklek gitu kan. Tapi dalam hal-hal yang lain, dalam ekonomi dia liberal gitu loh. Lebih liberal gitu maksudnya, bukan liberalisme ya, tapi lebih fleksibel gitu kan. Jadi memang terkadang agak sulit kutu untuk mengatakan itu oh Gus Dur ini sekuler atau apa. Justru kayak pemikiran Dr. Asifa ingin terhindar dari konsep sekuler dan konsep religius tadi, ingin moderasi sebenarnya, memoderasi gitu loh. Jadi tidak keluar dari nilai agama, tetapi tidak mungkin saklek dulu, seformal dulu kan gitu. Dan itu saya kira hal yang biasa saja, wajar saja. Makanya dalam fikih itu harus respect tadi, ya. Nah, respect itu memang pada dasarnya gimana supaya kita lebih respect ya kita harus berilmu. Nah, semakin tinggi ilmunya akan semakin respect kan. Kayak Imam Syafi'i itu sangat respect sekali dengan Imam Hambali, dengan Imam Maliki gitu kan. Nah, makanya kalau orang-orang berilmu memang relatif gampang aja melihat persoalan gitu loh. Nah, gitu. Jadi apa? Tidak terlalu kaku dalam melihat persoalan kan gitu. Ini ada yang khutbah Idul Adha cuman sekali, ada yang 2 kali ya. Kalau bagi ilmu ya biasa saja kan gitu kan. Tapi bagi yang tidak ngerti mungkin akan menjadi masalah kan gitu. Jadi respect itu sangat tergantung pada pengetahuan. As Dr. Asifa said ya. Jadi orang yang ngerti usul fiqh, ngurusi filosofinya akan lebih mudah memahami persoalan kan gitu kan. Jadi kalau kita ribut karena apa? Karena yang pengetahuan kita terbatas gitu kan. Ya. Tapi semakin tinggi biasanya makanya gitu orang Muhammadiyah sama NU tokoh-tokoh utamanya nyantai-nyantai aja gitu kan. Tapi di bawah saling serang gitu. Ya. Jadi pernah katanya, wah di Madura nih, di satu tempat nih, di sini orangnya Islam semua. Kecuali 1 atau 2 orang. Apa agamanya? Muhammadiyah katanya. Itu di bawah itu. Ya, itu di bawah. Tapi bagi Din Samsudin sama Hasim Muzadi itu dua-duanya keluaran satu pesantren tuh, makanya nyantai aja. Kata Hasim Muzadi, Din Samsudin tuh orang NU yang dititipin di Muhammadiyah katanya. Nah, gitu. Jadi memang seperti itu ya kalau mau respect ya. Jadi saya kira harus semakin tinggi kita memahami persoalan maka akan semakin enjoy gitu kan. Nah, tetapi saya melihat memang ini perlu kita dalami ya untuk pemikiran Dr. Asifa ini. Saya juga masih belajar ini ya. Well, Dokter, I must learn more what you think, what your proposal ya. Mungkin apa sih perbedaan mendasarnya nanti ya? Karena ini public good ini memang masalah al-ammah ya. Jadi bagaimana kita mendefinisikan masalah how to defend masalah al-ammah ya. Jadi pemikiran Yusup Kordowi, pemikiran mungkin kalau klasik Al-Ghazali ya, ataupun Syatibi sampai pemikiran-pemikiran yang terbaru kontemporer ya, itu perlu kita dalami sehingga mungkin kalau bukunya nanti udah terbit mungkin kita akan diskusi lagi ya. Mudah-mudahan itu akan menjadi kalau bisa kita undang yang lainnya gitu kan, ahli-ahli qasid syariah kan ya. Karena saya kira ini cukup menarik ya. Tidak hanya dari sini, mungkin dari Timur Tengah ataupun dari Inggris nanti kita undang semuanya. Saya kira itu thank you very much Dr. Asifa ya. We wait you for next time ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Doctor, for the answer. So the discussion proved to be engaging. I mean, it's very interesting what Professor Asifa and also Dr. Yusup has been presented previously. But you know, the concern is about the time. So the time is limited us, all of us. Then betul, yes, sure. And I don't think I have to conclude anything since you know Prof. Asifa and also Dr. Yusup has been explained to us about the Islamic Constitution itself. And special thank I would like to give a round of applause again to Professor Asifa and also Dr. Yusup Hidayat. And once I would like to hand back the reins of the event to the MC. Okay, thank you for me as a moderator. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Muhamad, Faiz, Aziz as a moderator. We're going to the next agenda by awarding a plaque to Prof. Asifa Quraishi-Landes, professor at University of Wisconsin Law School, from Mr. Yusup Hidayat SAGMH, Dean of Faculty of Law, University of Azhar, Indonesia. And then, this is souvenir from Jentera Law School. This is a souvenir from Jentera Law School to Faculty of Law, University of Azhar, Indonesia. And Azhar to Jentera. The participants, please give applause. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end of today's agenda. Let us close the seminar by reciting Hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Those are the agendas we have presented to you all this morning. We hope that useful events like this will be held again in the future. Thank you